conversations that move us. We are coming into a brand new week, and I must say, certainly one doesn't get that sense of certainty or even stability going into the week, given where things are in terms of the state of our government. And there are a couple of reflections that I would like us to have as part of the open line as we continue with the show. Before I get into it, perhaps just to look at what's coming up on the show today. I trust you've had a good weekend. It is school holidays, so I know lots of parents are perhaps enjoying the school holidays. It's been raining and gloomy and overcast. It just feels like summer was not part of the plan. Summer was not part of the plan. For the last couple of months, at least in Johannesburg, it feels like it's been raining nonstop. So from here on, I guess we've just got to embrace the fact that we're getting into winter, and not a day of sun or not a week of sun will be enjoyed. I don't know. The weather guys will probably give a much better reason for why that is the case. I'm just speaking here as somebody who's like all of you, experiencing the weather as it unfolds. Well, coming up on the show today, in the second hour of the show, we're going to be looking at the U.S. tariff hikes and the impact that that's going to have on the country. We'll be joined in that conversation by Dr. Azar Jamim, who is the Director-in-Chief Economist at Econometrics. Pelisa Nkomo is a development economist with Oxfam. They'll be weighing in terms of what it is exactly that we should be expecting, anticipating as a country. And then the final hour of the show, we're going to look at the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel, and really trying to understand how far they are with the work that they had been doing. Remember that part of the work that they need to do is to work on some of the proposals for an electoral system. That particular panel was mandated to investigate independently and to consult and make recommendations in light of the 2024 elections, which we know were the first elections held under the amended Electoral Act. So we'll touch base with that panel and find out how far they are with the work that they're doing. So that's what's coming up on the show over the next 3 hours. We are going to start off with the open line, and it is your national roundtable. But I must say that, one of the things that has, and I don't know how you feel about it, but it really is something that is incredibly disheartening when we look at the state of our governance today, but also when we look at the political discourse that is taking place at the level of politicians. And this is what politicians are saying about the state of the country, what they are saying about each other, and how, we move forward. We're facing, very obviously, a complex set of circumstances as a country currently. Those are external, those are also internal. Now, when it comes to the external, there's a lot that is happening that may not necessarily be within our control. Internally, however, things are, I think, different. Because there is a level of power, there's a level of decision-making that we as a country are able to exercise over some of these affairs. And the debate right now is really about, well, what is going to happen with the GNU? And there was an interesting comment or even piece that was put together by Mpumelelo Mkhabelo, who basically makes an argument around the GNU. And he says that it doesn't matter what the configuration of the parties is, as long as there aren't these principles that these parties all subscribe to, we're going to find ourselves in the same position over and over again. And I thought about that, and just go and look at what is happening on social media. listen to what it is that these politicians have to say about each other, whether it's in debates, whether they're being interviewed on the street, there is sometimes absolutely no level of respect, not only for each other, but also just for the weight of issues that they're dealing with and the implications that all of this has for us as the people of this country. So Exhibit A will be, and this is really, really low-hanging fruit, but just yesterday on X, Silius Brink tweets, right? And he puts this up on his X, and he says, Gayton confirmed, he's quote tweeting Gayton McKenzie, who had put online the letters that had been shared between the GNU partners. And he's making an argument about why it is he believes that they always had the intention of self-interest and not really the country at heart. But when one looks at that full letter in its entirety, I think there are different arguments to be made. So Silius Brings then quote tweets Gayton McKenzie, and he says, Gayton confirms that the PA and other ANC fools, one, voted for the VAT hike without asking government to make changes to prevent future tax hikes. Instead of taking the booze away from the alcoholics, the fools are topping him up, dancing and celebrating on the public tab. Now, if you go and you just go on social media, see what these politicians are saying. Look at the tone. Look at the tone. Look at the level of engagement that is happening. And I just wonder, in terms of your own observations as the people of this country, because again, Mdumise Ntuli over the weekend quoted as saying that, as the ANC, when it comes to how they are going to be making a decision about whether or not the DA needs to remain as part of the government of national unity, that they are going to be looking at what it is that is going to keep the South African support base with the ANC. So if it means they have to keep the DA, that's exactly what they will do, if it guarantees that they're going to maintain the support of the base. When you look at all of these things as South Africans, what is it that you would want to see the politicians changing? And changing as in immediately, in order to ensure that we don't keep going around in circles. Because more than not, we're missing the maturity, we're missing the leadership in this moment. That is what we are missing. It seems like this is a high school street fight, and the people that need to be showing up to the party are simply not doing that. And yet, we are facing amongst the most complex problems that we have as a country in a long time. But we can't soberly have those conversations when the people who are supposed to be leading from the front can't keep it together for a minute. How are they going to govern in any kind of government of national unity and lead this country into any prosperous future if this is what we must live with every day? Insults, mediocrity. Oh, come on. I think the people of this country deserve better. Anyway, as you can hear, I'm quite riled up, but you might not feel the same. I'll be taking your calls. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Ultimately, there's a country to be run. An entire country with over 60 million people. Why don't we deserve better?
Specsavers cares about your vision. Glaucoma is known as the silent thief of sight, as most cases don't have any symptoms. Get tested today. Specsavers.
At Buco, we know that every successful building project starts with quality and ends with pride. From small contractors to big builders, we're here to ensure that you have the tools, materials, and support to do the job right the first time. With Buco, you're never building alone. We are right here, ready to make your project a lasting success from the foundation to paint. For every step and every build, begin with Buco.
Buco.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, you're listening to The Talking Point. It's your national roundtable, your open line. I'm taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial on the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104107. Madume, you're out in Gqeberha. Good morning.
Hey, I was Casey. Ke kula le kwatile mara ke tlo botsisa hore le kae kwa ke nna ba mathomo. Le kae? I was Casey ke nyaka go bolela ka taba ya hore how is it in South Africa, ne? You are speaking about how the politicians are running the country and actually they don't get along. But then, funny enough, how can they let a 40% party control the whole country? If these politicians feel like they can do a much better job, they can just all come together and actually make a 60% majority and actually run the country. How is it that they're allowing to be dictated by the ANC that everyone wants out, but then seemingly everyone wants to work with the ANC? Like, I don't understand. If indeed these people think that they've got the best interest of the country at heart, why is it that they can't just actually say, we are putting all our differences together and we are removing this thing called the cancer, as these DA people call it, and say the ANC is a cancer to South Africa? How come these people do not actually come and actually say, let us put all our differences aside and work together for the benefit of the country, if no one is really in it for themselves?
Look, you know what, Madume, what is becoming perhaps a bit more evident is that even the complexity of how a GNU is formed is not as simplistic as one would think it is, right? You would have seen that statement coming out of Business Unity South Africa over the weekend, to which the president had a very stern response, and I think rightfully so. But more than ever, one gets the sense that there are all of these vested interests in terms of how the government in South Africa needs to be configured. And these are the things that we also need to be looking at closely and having conversations about. But we can't even get there because it has become about all of these egos and all of these individuals and who has to say what first thing in the morning when they wake up, that it detracts from what is really, I think, substantive to the moment.
Yeah, and it's actually sad because if indeed we need to be dictated by business or by vested interest in South Africa, then do the elections really mean anything? Because if, let's say right now, so it happens, in a parallel universe, a party that vested interest does not want to win, it wins the election. What does it mean? Are they going to discampaign that whole party's reign for the whole tenure of 5 years because that's not the party that they want?
And you see, Madume, these are all the things that we should be having very honest conversations about, including with the political parties themselves, right? Because they're the ones that understand who are the players behind the scenes that are influencing things in one way or the other. But we can't even
No,
get there. We can't even get there.
and just a few seconds. I just want to say I would like to thank whoever is in the board of SAFM who has brought back so many of the shows that I listen to because you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I literally listen to SAFM from 5 a.m. until Nakwabo Oliver at 12, until marking night talk at Oliver.
That's
I think you guys
wonderful,
are doing
Madume.
you're doing a fantastic job, and
Thank
actually
you.
thank you,
Thank you
Kelly.
so much. Alongside my colleagues, we really, really appreciate that. Arthur, you're in Pongola. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. SA family. How are you?
Good, Arthur. Go for it.
Like the previous caller, I don't switch off SAFM 24 hours. I just want to say, for the first time, about this case of Omatoso, why we are surprised in South Africa if we did have a similar case of Kwezi. Let us remember that case and compare this one. The similarities are there. Coming to this politician issue, I said before, we need someone like Ibrahim Traore. And Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso is bigger and is not even half equivalent to the members of the parliament or the politician in South Africa. This guy is topping them because he has the influence of getting the people of Burkina Faso to poverty. Here in South Africa, we have got politicians who just want to insult each other for the sake of being popular, and we get nothing in South Africa as the population of South Africa. That's our problem.
Arthur, how do you think that we can also begin to help break that culture? Because ultimately, these are parties that are accountable to members, but that are also accountable to the electorate, because it is the electorate that has given them that vote, that has given them the levers to power.
The first problem we have in South Africa was when politicians decided to not put politician as a subject from the school level. If they make sure they have political science or politics as a subject from the ground level on all schools, we can have that knowledge of politics. Secondly, we have the issue of IEC. IEC is not in a position to serve the people. IEC is in a position to fool people in a sense that they want to go now to say, we have to vote online. Yet they knew that they cannot even just manage what they have in practicality. They cannot control politicians to say, you don't go to people and say, if you vote me, I will give you pack of rice and dry pack. If they can eliminate that rule and say, if you do that, then we disqualify you, then we can get this thing into order, because now all the votes that we get are bribery votes. It's not like it's a fair vote. It's a bribery because you buy someone to say, give me this one, I will give you this. You come up with the bribe and then set up ads or whatever, then I owe you a vote.
So basically you're saying that we shouldn't be surprised when we see this at a leadership level, because our politics has become very transactional, even for us as voters.
Exactly. Well, elections are commercial. It's no longer just the democracy. It's how the better person will just come to your area to say, I have got 10 millimil per house. Then you vote for that person. But you don't vote per se what you're gonna need. And they are like that.
Okay.
Prove me wrong if I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Anyone must prove me wrong.
Give
me one politician who said in South Africa, the whole cabinet, the whole parliament, give me one politician who said you are definitely sure you're not corrupt. Give me one, not one.
Okay. Arthur and Pongola, we're going to leave it there with you for this morning. It is the National Roundtable. I'm taking your calls on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. We'll take the latest 9:30 news headlines. I'm back with your calls on the National Roundtable.
Good morning. In the headlines, former public protector and Umkhonto weSizwe Party MP advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane has described the Legal Practice Council's intention to apply for her disbarment as politically motivated. The Gauteng Health Department, in partnership with the Medical Bureau for Occupational Diseases, has extended former mine workers' registration for benefits till till Friday. And scientists in Britain, Portugal, and Belgium have found a way to remotely detect the presence of invasive Asian hornets. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Welcome to the open line. It's your national roundtable. I'm taking your calls on 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Of course, you're more than welcome to raise any matter of national interest. You've already heard what's on my mind this morning, and I guess all of it really coming out of a deep sense of just the state that we're in as a country, the seriousness with which we need to consider any decision that we're making right now, whether it's on the domestic or international front, but really a frustration that says that is not being expressed at leadership level, not with the quality, not with the tone, just with everything that politicians are throwing into the hat. Dumisani, you're in Soweto. You want to talk about border management.
Thank you. Good morning, Cathy and the listeners.
Yes, Dumisani, go for it.
Cathy, you're talking about leadership, which is very, very crucial topic. In the border management, we have the so-called commissioner and his deputies, but they are very clueless of what they're doing. Extremely clueless, Cathy. There's a lot of things happening on the ground that I've never heard the commissioner when he's on the media platform addressing, people on the ground, the masses on the ground, referring to the staff are not happy. The salaries fluctuate monthly. The tax fluctuates monthly. There are monies that are being owed to employees. Their rights are being taken.
Okay, Dumisani, what do you mean the salaries fluctuate monthly?
Cathy, when you're an employee, you know that monthly I'm getting 5 rand. This month you get 5 rand. The next month you get 10 rand. The next month, there's no fixed salary. Even if you were to go and ask for credit, they will question your pay slip because it fluctuates.
And is it a function of how these individuals are employed? Because obviously if people are coming in as contract workers or shift workers, they might not be able to, you need to complete X amount of shifts to get X amount at the end of the month?
No, kids. Remember how BMA was formed? There's different departments that were combined, which is agriculture and fisheries, health, and home affairs. So everyone knew that monthly I'm getting this. Every time there should be an increase, your tax will go up. You understand? As labor unions have been trying to address this, but nothing is changing. They said before, because there was no CFO. They said CFO now. They said they've hired, tech specialist. Nothing has changed. Third parties, I'm talking about your insurances, they're still being owed money.
Are you an employee, Dumisani, or you know somebody that is?
Yes, I am.
So these are things that you've been experiencing directly.
Yes. Experiencing directly, and I've been being outspoken about it, but nothing is happening.
And when you approach the HR office, what do they say?
It's just a mess. They created an email where you raise issues of concerns, but no one responds. For instance, now, Cathy, there were bursaries that were the bursary applications that was opened. Only the past few weeks, the outcome was given to us, and most of us we have been rejected, saying they don't have a budget, and now even the structure that's being there, apparently it was rejected by Treasury.
Yeah,
But they're coming to us to say there is this new grading structure, partisan structure, which they can't even articulate when you ask questions.
Okay, Dumsani, I'm going to put you through to our producers just so that you can share a bit more information. I do know that the Border Management Authority is one of those whose budget is going to be reprioritized towards other things, not the entire budget, of course, but there is some truth in what you're saying there. So it's just something that perhaps we'll need to take a closer look at to understand what are the full implications of that. Sanele, you're calling from KZN. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. How are you?
Sanele, I'm well. Go for it.
Yes, Cathy. Just on the issue of, I think the overarching message would be the social cohesion. What we see happening with our politicians, I think it's just a picture of how our society is fragmented. Look, I don't think it's possible for our political parties to really represent all of our views. You mentioned earlier, the things that are happening on social media, how political parties are just, tearing each other apart. It's the same as between black and white. Maybe let me just start there, where most of our issues, lie, which is the racial tensions in our country. When you look at comments between in various social media posts, how black people comment and how white people comment, and how racial tensions are on the increase. So it's not a surprise that you'd find certain political parties or certain politicians, playing the race card, because their constituencies basically believe or hold those kinds of views. So whatever we see Brink saying, whatever we see maybe Malema saying, I think it's inherently how the people that they represent feel and believe, and actually it represents, the social outlook from all of these different constituencies. So let's maybe not blame our politicians a lot. Maybe let's just, smell our own armpits as a society. These people are representing us, and are we proud in the way that they are representing us? The issues that they are bringing forth, are we content with that? Because it seems like we are all fine and we accept the racial narratives that are being portrayed in Parliament and even in social media.
Sanele, I don't believe that these are views that necessarily reflect what the majority of South Africans feel and believe.
Yeah.
Because if we are to take a really good look at even who shows up to vote on voting day, we know that it is not the majority of South Africans who are making decisions about how our politics is configured. And so the problem is, when we are quiet about what we see, it does create the impression that then it must be okay. We give it a stamp of approval just by the omission of our voices, by the omission of our support or lack of support. And so we do need to start calling it out and saying, this doesn't represent us. Like this is not what we as the people of South Africa want to see happening in our country, regardless of which political parties behind it or driving it or whatever the case might be.
Yes. Yeah, but I think also us as a people, we really need to do some introspection. I think there's always been there's that talk of a national dialogue and whatnot. But yeah, I think as a people, before politics, we really need to articulate our issues better. and maybe at some point we are going to stop racializing everything and just attend to issues at hand, whether it's issues affecting people in townships or in the urban area.
All right.
Maybe also as a second point, Cathy, I'm just going to rush through this. Is it possible maybe at some point do an IDP introspection of different municipalities? Reason being is, we all of us are complaining about service delivery. Maybe it's high time that we look at the integrated development plans of each municipality, Joburg, Cape Town, and whichever one. Just zoom in into that IDP of that particular municipality and allow citizens to
Sanele,
their issues.
Listen to the show on Thursdays,
Yeah.
Municipal Watch, between 10 and 11.
Yes.
I think you'll find that a lot of the issues that you're raising in that last part are issues that we actually cover on a week-to-week basis. All right, let's bring in some of your WhatsApp voice notes, and then we'll continue with the calls that you're putting through.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Sis Katie. It's Fugane from Tepen. Sis Katie, this thing is funny. When I went to vote on the 29th of May, I never saw any political party called business people, businesses. But we seem right now to be run by this business, busy telling us, no, DA is this, DA is this. If we wanted to vote DA into power, we would have voted DA into power. We don't want the DA and ANC. The DA brought us back this demon of ANC. So right now, they're just trying to swing stories that ANC is bad and whatnot and whatnot. It's their doing that ANC is back.
A very good morning, Kat, and the listeners of SAFM. I think the GNU is in tatters now. One of the critical issues is that the EFF is on the doorway to occupy that position. And the DA must just do an honorable thing to submit the divorce papers so that the divorce decree can be able to be issued by Home Affairs as a matter of urgency. It's Jeffrey Spey, Mtata.
Yes, JJ State Spirit. Okay, even if there's a trouble between DA and ANC, to bring the EFF and controversies in and discard the DA will be really disastrous for us, because Umkhonto is those people who put our economy on the ground, and EFF is like a jackal waiting to eat too.
Moingede, the GNU will never collapse, never, because it's not a government of the people, it's a government of the elites. Yet, EFF has an interest of joining them as well. Here, when you look at this thing, the ANC needs DA to keep the blue lamp, and the DA needs the ANC as a stepping stone to union building. So, no one will ever leave here.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the open line. Well, I guess, talking about those interests, it comes down to whose interests are really at play when it comes to the decision making, right? Who are the biggest beneficiaries here? Is it us, the electorate, or is it other players that we might not necessarily be paying full attention to? KB, you are in KZN. Good morning.
Hi, Cathy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Cathy. My concern is about Department of Transport. So I've applied to renew a PDP earlier, and then I was issued with the extension letter. So the extension letter takes about 4 months to expire. And then when I went to look for my card, and then they told me that they've got a problem. They've got a machine broken down and print the card. So now they're asking me to pay more money to do a temporary license while it's their fault. that cause all these things.
So the machine has been broken for 4 months.
No, the machine, the national machine that's printing the cards, like, because it happened before when Pigili Mbalula was the transport minister. We had that the machine need to be fixed in Germany overseas. But now, that's what they're saying there. So I don't know if you can find out from the
yes,
from the
yes,
Department
KB.
of Transport.
So what I'm asking you is, has the machine been broken for the last 4 months, or it was fixed and then it broke again? What's your understanding?
No. It's not fixed. It's been broken down because the whole group that applied from January till now, they're telling us that from that time there till now, that machine is still broken. I still believe that the machine is still broken till now because we cannot have this card here. Instead of that, they're asking us to pay more now for the temporary, while we did everything on time, while we had the extension. Instead of them extending the extension, but they want us to pay more.
Which is really unfair for you as the end user, right? Okay. KB, we're going to have to look into it. The
place that I did this is contained in Pietermaritzburg.
Okay.
So, but I need you maybe to find out from the National Transport Department if it's the way to go.
We'll do that, KB. We'll have to get in touch with the transport department. This is to find out what exactly is happening with that particular machine. As KB had said, it's not the first time that we've had issues with the issuing of licenses for particular drivers. Hopefully we're not back there. Maybe it's an issue that is isolated to KZN. I don't know, KB. We'll have to look into it. Let me go to Colin in Cape Town. Good morning, Colin.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning. You know, Cathy, we learn from the media and especially radio. You know, radio gives us a lot of information. Radio connects us. Presenters connect us to the radio and listen to each other and ask questions and so and so. Now, what I want to complain about is our presenters we got on radio. I listened to SAFM from the morning earlier already. Our presenters don't seem to guide listeners, the callers that call in, and correct them when they are wrong. Now, we've got this tariff increases. Now, everybody is blaming AgriForum for it. And the presenter does not even try and guide them and say, no, this is a worldwide thing. Now, they reckon the callers, I listen to them, they reckon we don't need a goer. We don't need a goer. Because now AgriForum is going to suffer and the boer is going to suffer for what they've done to us in this country. Now the presenter says, oh, thank you for the call. No, the presenter is also there to educate and help us. If we are wrong, guide us a bit and explain to us. You know what I mean, Cathy?
It's a fair point that you're making, Colin.
You know what I mean?
I can't disagree with it. Yeah.
And Cathy, another thing too is, you know, Sunday morning, this radio station, so early in the morning, mudslinging, people phoning in and fighting each other on the radio, so early in the morning. So what I did this Sunday, I thought, let me tune to another station. And you know, I heard an old voice that was on your station years ago. Tami in Kubeni.
Yes, on Metro FM.
Yes, what a beautiful hour. I laid in my bed. And she said, oh, I'll tell you what, I'm going to listen to it. I'm sorry, I'm going to not switch over to SAFM that morning. I'm going to listen to Tami. No, sorry.
All right, Colin.
And you know something? She was talking about leaders. She read a piece from Joshua, how God commanded Joshua to lead his people. And that subject, You know, you get goosebumps when you listen to Tommy.
Yeah, she really is fantastic. She
Beautiful.
really, really.
And I said to her, where's Tato? I said, come on. I used to phone in. And she laughed. She said, Colin, I remember your voice.
Wonderful, Colin.
Yes.
Have a good week.
But
All
anyway,
right.
our presenters must rectify our listeners.
I
Manny.
hear you, Colin. Let's leave it there. Colin out in Cape Town. Yeah, I mean, Tamingubeni has been just, I don't know, how do you even describe it? She's like a feature on that Sunday morning slot on our sister station, Metro FM. So at least you didn't go too far, Colin. You're still sort of keeping it in the family, so we can't be too upset about that. Let me go to Tsepo in Dinukana. Good morning, Tsepo. Oh, in fact, Tsepo, let me do this. I've got a break coming up. Let me take the break and I'll come back to you on the other side of this.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours, make a difference.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morrell. Plus, Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
What is your money doing right now? Is it lazing around in that other account because you're not sure where to move it for premium growth? Well, let's make it work hard in a Standard Bank Money Market Select investment account, where we'll grow it with a nominal interest of up to 7.9% on a minimum deposit of 100,000 Rand. Plus, you get access to your funds anytime. Open yours online or on our app today. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to the National Roundtable. It's your open line. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial on the WhatsApp voice note line. We're taking those voice notes and text messages on 0614 104 107. Tsepo, you are in Dinukana. Good morning.
Good morning, Sis Cathy.
Yes, sir.
And the listeners of SAFM. Yes, Sis Cathy, it's me again, Tsepo Modinokana, as you are saying. You know, the last time I talked to you, it was on the 28th of January 2025, responding to what Dr. Kekana was saying regarding the issue of public transport in Nakamujirumulema. You know what has transpired from that time till now? On the 6th of February, we had a meeting with Dr. Kekana and the chief director and the director at the tribal office. And in that meeting, the HOD, together with the chief director, they promised Bokhosi Barona in Dinukana that on the 1st of March 2025 or 1st of April 2025, there will be another provider on the ground replacing Atamelang. But to our surprise, today is the 7th. Nothing is happening. No one is telling us anything. What happened is that last week on the 1st of April, I called the department and they referred me to the chief director. She promised me that on the 7th, there will be buses on the ground. But this morning, I WhatsApp her just to check with her if the situation is going to change. She said to me she's on her way to the office. But I don't trust them anymore. I just want to let the people of South Africa that they must know.
Tsepo, did they ever bring in an intervention as they had promised?
No, there's nothing. There's nothing, Tiskevy. That's why I've called you today, hoping that maybe Dr. Kekana will hear me and he will respond as he was saying, he listened to SAFM. There's nothing. People are still struggling.
Yeah, you see, Tsepo, you know what I have a serious problem with? It's that the HOD in this instance, Dr. Kekana, is the one that volunteered himself to come on air and made the commitments that he was making. So to learn that 3 months after the fact, nothing has happened beyond just the meetings that have taken place, meetings of commitment, is incredibly disheartening. We're going to get in touch with Dr. Kekana and have him explain to us why it is that despite his commitment as the HOD, by the way, because he said what would make the difference is that he, as the person responsible for the processes, was personally handling this matter.
Exactly. It's what he said.
Okay.
Even in front of the host of Bahuruti Modinokana, he made that commitment. But but nothing's happening. But let's wait. Maybe he will respond to my call. I don't know.
Okay, Tsepo. Thanks for that. Tsepo is, of course, one of the very fierce accountability fighters in his area. Just a local guy who has decided that some of the things that are happening in his community are not things that he's going to watch silently, and he's going to speak up and hold people accountable where possible. So I really, really admire what TEP was able to do so consistently, raising these issues without fail. Let me go to Yanga. Yanga, you're in Rosebank. Good morning.
Good morning, Oskete.
Yes, Yanga?
Yes. No, Oskete, I want to give you a feedback to say I'm a homeowner.
Oh, wow. Congratulations, Yanga.
Yeah.
But wasn't it just 2 weeks ago that you called in complaining about the criteria that is used by these banking institutions?
By Standard Bank, yes, Oskete.
Okay, what changed?
My landlord was patient enough and said to me, look, man, there's other options, because I got banks use the same criteria. And he told me about this company, SA Home Loans. And I went to SA Home Loans with the same, information that Standard Bank, didn't approve me, but this company did approve the bond. Okay. As to, I'm asking myself, I mean, and they using a same criteria to assess affordability.
Yeah, look, Yanga, the criteria might always look the same, but how they apportion that risk, of course, is always different to individuals. I think we had that conversation.
Yes, no, okay. It is a pure racism and profiling, black people as these, high risk clients. To be honest, okay, that's how I feel, But yeah, Standard Bank wanted to shatter, my dream of owning a property. I mean, I've been renting from 2011.
Sure.
A flat of 12,000 a month, so you can do your calculations, and Standard Bank wanted to shatter my dream of becoming a house owner, and thanks to this company, SA Home Loans. So yeah.
Okay.
That is my feedback.
Yanga, thanks for that feedback and congratulations. How are you feeling?
Sure. Okay. Owning a house gives you a sense of dignity. You can point to something to say, this is my house. So yeah. With mixed emotion, like I said, but yeah. At least I can say I have a house.
Congratulations, Yanga. It hasn't been an easy journey, as you've shared with all of us.
It was an emotional journey that Standard Bank has put me through.
Okay. Well, certainly congratulations to you. And the reality is that, many people will have different experiences with banking institutions, right? Yanga will call in and talk about his personal experience with Standard Bank, as he said, but you'll find that people have similar experiences with other banks as well. It's not confined to a Standard Bank. I think that there are genuine concerns over how it is that banks apportion that risk, and just what are people supposed to do when they believe that they can show that they'll be able to keep up with their monthly payments. And the point that Yanga had made when he had called in was that he was asking, why is it easier to get a car loan than it is to get a home loan? Because while he was denied a home loan, he was offered credit for a car loan, which didn't make sense to him. Anyway, good news to wrap up the open line with this morning. Congratulations to you, Yanga. It's 10 o'clock.
In our top stories, 3 men shot and killed in Mufulo Central in Soweto, and registration for ex-mine workers' unclaimed benefits extended. Good morning. 3 men believed to be taxi marshals have been killed in a shooting incident along the Mahalefele Road and Nape Avenue in Mufulo Central in Soweto. Johannesburg Metro Police and emergency services are currently at the scene of the shooting. Spokesperson Xolani Fihla says vehicles are being diverted at the junction of Machaba Drive and Mageza Street.
Expect potential road closures, traffic diversions and increased congestion in the area as authorities manage the scene, and motorists are advised to avoid Mahalefele Road towards Mufulo Central, and coming from Dube, motorists are advised to use Mncube Drive, Leselinyana and Ginini Street to get to Machaba Drive, and from Zulu Drive, motorists can use Machaba Drive as alternative routes.
Former Public Protector and Umkhonto weSizwe Party MP Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane has described the Legal Practice Council's intention to apply for her disbarment as politically motivated. Parliament impeached her after finding her guilty of misconduct and incompetence. Mkhwebane was removed as Public Protector in 2023 following a Section 194 inquiry into her fitness to hold office. She says there's no justification for the LPC's intention.
You can't publish or use a journalist to publish information on X if you are professional as an organization and you don't have ulterior motives. There is information which I have that the previous council did discuss the matter actually after Advocate Hoffman lodged an application with the Pretoria High Court whilst I was still the public protector to have mistruck of the law, and that was thrown out of court, and they then entertained the matter but decided there's no merit on the matter. So why bring it back now?
The Gauteng Health Department, in partnership with the Medical Bureau for Occupational Diseases, has extended to Friday ex-mine workers' registration for benefits. The extension for the former mine workers on the West Rand comes after some missed the initial 2-week registration period. The aim of the initiative is to identify and support those who may be eligible for Social Security benefits following work-related illnesses or unclaimed provident and pension funds. The department spokesperson Mutalatale Mudiba.
Registration will be available during weekdays from 8 to 3 at various venues. We just need to indicate to the public that 2 of the original venues have since changed. Mohlakeng EMS has now replaced Ramosa Hall. Carltonville Hospital has replaced Carltonville Civic Center, while Khutsong Extension 4 Multipurpose Center, Molahlegi Hall in Kokosi and Chief Mokhale Hall in Kagiso. We also want to remind the ex-mine workers that when they come through, they need to make sure that they bring along their relevant documentation.
The family of a University of Venda student who was found dead at his off-campus residence says it's waiting for a forensic report from police. Security officers found Vuchilo Munyai dead in his room in Thohoyandou, Limpopo last Wednesday. They then alerted university management. Munyai's aunt says they have many questions about the death of their loved one.
The university management came to our home and informed us that Vuchilo was found dead at his off-campus residence. We were all shocked. and surprised because they were telling us this information when they had already taken him to the mortuary. As the family, we want to know what happened to him and why did they take him to the mortuary without informing us first. We have so many questions, but yet there are no reasonable answers.
And finally, scientists in Britain, Portugal and Belgium have found a way to remotely detect the presence of invasive Asian hornets. They hover outside beehives where they pose a threat to native species. Asian hornets can kill up to 50 honeybees a day. The BBC's Ali McConnell reports.
The Asian hornet is thought to have arrived in Europe in a cargo of pots from China about 20 years ago. Since then, it's gone on to devastate native honeybee colonies in France and Italy and has spread rapidly to other countries. Now, using inexpensive microphones and an algorithm, researchers have developed a way to identify the Asian hornet's hovering flight sounds and to differentiate them from those of the honeybee and other background noises. This could allow beekeepers to receive hornet alerts via their smartphone and to take swift action before the threat to their hives becomes serious.
Recapping the top story, 3 men believed to be taxi marshals have been killed in a shooting incident along the Mahalefele Road and Nape Avenue in Mufullo Central in Soweto. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
At Buco, we know that every successful building project starts with quality and ends with pride. From small contractors to big builders, we're here to ensure that you have the tools, materials, and support to do the job right the first time. With Buco, you're never building alone. We are right here, ready to make your project a lasting success, from the foundation to paint. For every step and every build, begin with Buco.
Buco. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Is John Steenhuisen and Cyril Ramaphosa meeting?
I am of the understanding that they have had a conversation, yes. There is a back and forth that's currently underway. We have not concluded yet. We were supposed to conclude last night between ourselves with the DA and the ANC. That conclusion hasn't happened yet. But you would also know, Ashraf, that the Finance Committee has been in a meeting since 10 o'clock this morning. And in that meeting, the Democratic Alliance has moved for an amendment and a tabling of an alternative fiscal framework, which opposes that.
Karabo Kauhau, the DA national spokesperson.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Eight after 10 o'clock, welcome to the second hour of The Talking Point. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be unpacking the U.S. tariff hikes, in particular on South Africa, and really looking then at what are the implications of these hikes. What does this latest step by the U.S. President Donald Trump signal, not only for the African continent, but also for South Africa, in as far as that African Growth and Opportunity Act is concerned, AGOA. How worried should South Africa be about still being part of AGOA when you have these tariffs implemented or effected anyway? Do the two not almost cancel each other out? So that's part of the conversation we'll be having in the hour, and we do have two guests that have been lined up for you who I think, they're really good at what they do. They understand these things, and they should be able to give us a bit of insight into how it is we as a country can and even should be responding to these tariff increases. Before we get to that, we'll take a couple of your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy and the listeners. It's Kishi here from the Western Cape. Only last week I heard the President saying that the success of this country depends on the participation of the private sector, and that business has a very, very, very big role to play, which of course it does, because without business, there's no employment, there's no revenue, there's no country. Finished and klar. At the same time, the unions also, they play a huge role in terms of who's elected even. So for Mr. Ramaphosa to now start admonishing and saying the tail doesn't wag the dog, I think is a little bit rich, because the dog was chosen by the people. The people actually put the government in power. They are our public servants. And the last note I want to make is that in this whole budget debacle about how we're going to save money and where we're going to find it, not one politician from any party suggested a dropping in their salaries. Makes you think.
Morning, Cathy. Justice Nkian. Hi. Congratulations to the guy who got approval for his home loan. I concur with him in terms of fighting racism. But I beg to differ a bit, not trying to be smart, but I think it has to do with the class. For example, Katie, if you get a retail store in the village or in the rural township, and then at the entrance there is a security, we always check whatever you purchased, and then you comparing to a retail store in the estate suburb, where they don't put the security in the entrance to check whatever you have purchased. It has nothing to do with the racism. It's a class. I rest my case. Thank you very much. Morning, Cathy.
Cathy, SACP won the ANC. But ANC didn't listen to SACP. When SACP said that DA and Freedom Front Plus must not part of the government. But the ANC decided to take DA and Freedom Front Plus to be part of the government. I wish DA and Freedom Front Plus to resist to be removed in this GNU. I'm Kulule Gotuma from Harding at Santombe.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen. Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Our countries from across the world have been taking stock of the tariff increases announced by President Donald Trump. Some, including China, Brazil and Japan, have already announced their countermeasures. The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has warned the U.S. against these tariff hikes, saying that it could lead to a contraction in global trade. Many European and Southeast Asian countries have also opted to negotiate with the U.S. despite the imposition of those tariffs. For South Africa, we've received a 30% tariff hike on products going into the U.S., not all, but certainly some products going into the U.S., and the government has noted this particular development with great concern. This is what President Ramaphosa had to say on the U.S. tariff hike issue in Shawelo in Soweto this weekend.
And as regards the United States, like any other country, is a sovereign country, and they are entitled to take decisions in whichever way they want to, like ourselves. We are a sovereign country and we can decide on any matter that has to do with our international dealings with others. And so It is within our right as it is within their right. They have imposed tariffs, and we are examining the impact of those tariffs on us. And as the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition said, we will be able to state what our position is. So in the end, these are matters that we are going to continue dealing with in a very responsible and very, very proper manner. And we are not a government that will just act out of spite, and we are not a government that will act out of emotions. Everything that we do, we examine very carefully and look at the implications and the impact. So that is exactly what we are going to do. And we will therefore not be opining on what happens in other countries, as we don't believe that it's correct for anybody to be opining on what happens in our own country, because we don't want to interfere in what is happening in other countries. They are a sovereign country, and they must deal with their own challenges as we deal with our own challenges. And that is as far as we can go about what we are observing.
All right, so that was President Cyril Ramaphosa in Soweto this weekend. Now, we know that South Africa is seeking to forge some kind of trade deal with Washington, and this, of course, anticipating what might happen with the African Growth and Opportunity Act, where many have already said that there is a great likelihood of South Africa being chucked out of AGOA. Joining us for this conversation is Dr. Azar Jammine, who is a director and chief economist at Econometrics. Dr. Jammine, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners. It's not a very encouraging topic to be talking about at the moment.
Absolutely, and an important one nonetheless, right, for us to fully understand what is happening in this moment. Pelisa Nkomo is a development economist and board chair of Oxfam. Pelisa, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Hi, good morning, my sister, and good morning to the listeners. I share of Dr. Azar. Not very encouraged at all.
I want us to firstly start with perhaps being able to hear from both of you on just what the implications of this moment that we are in are. Yes, South Africa is not the only country that has been slapped with these tariffs. From what you can see, is there a particular strategy that the U.S. president is applying in the imposition of these tariffs? And most importantly, what are the implications of it for us? What is it really telling us about where we might be headed to in the future? Dr. Jammine, I'll begin with you.
Thank you. One has to, there are many facets to this. The idea underlying these tariffs are that, according to Trump, the United States is running large trade deficits with so many other countries. In other words, more countries are exporting more to the United States than the United States is exporting to them. And some of this he attributes to the fact that some of these countries are imposing tariffs on imports into their countries from the United States, and therefore making it more difficult for American companies to export to the U.S. And that this process has been going on for many years, if not decades. And one of the outcomes of this, according to him, is that is what has resulted in a decline in the U.S. manufacturing sector. So he's hoping that by imposing big tariffs on these countries in proportion to the amount that they are benefiting currently from imposing tariffs on products being imported from the United States, he will be able to restore some sort of balance and revitalize the U.S. manufacturing sector. The problem is that, firstly, the tariffs that he imposed on Wednesday are quite horrific way beyond what anyone expected, and way beyond anything the world has seen since the late 1800s. That's how far back it goes. And secondly, this does appear to mark the end of the era of globalization. Since the 1960s, the world has gradually been opening up the economy from one country to another, and the big increase in the level of international trade that has followed has been at the heart of a very prosperous period of world economic growth. Apologists will say that this growth has not been evenly spread across all income groups, and that the poor have not benefited as much as the rich. Some radical criticism would say that the poor have suffered relative to the rich, but actually the whole world has benefited, but the wealth pyramid has tended to become steeper and steeper into the hands of more and more, into the hands of the wealthy rather than the poor. But the poor haven't actually got poorer. The perception is, though, by comparing with the rich countries, that they have got poorer, comparing with the rich people as well. Now, the next complication is that countries have had various options through which to respond. And many, like South Africa, and now one hears with Zimbabwe, are trying to find ways of trying to get Trump to reverse his decisions and to strike a deal with him, because there's a perception that this man only wants to do business by making deals. And but you have got others, and this is the most important one, like China, that retaliated and said it is imposing a 34% tariff on U.S. imports into China in proportion to the tariffs that were imposed on it by the U.S. Now, that means that the world's two largest economies are actually now involved in a full-blown trade war at a rate that hasn't been seen in our lifetimes. That has spooked global markets, which are now predicting that the world is going to go into a major recession. And as much as we talk about AGOA and the 30% tariffs imposed on South African exports, the impact is nothing compared with the impact that would be felt by South Africa were the world economy indeed to go into recession. So people are tending to concentrate on the bilateral situation when the real concern that I have is on the international and global situation and the possibility that the world might be going into the sharpest economic decline of my lifetime. And that would obviously hurt everyone, and South Africa would suffer. As a consequence, as an economic consultancy house, we are revising our forecasts for South Africa's economic growth this year downwards from around 1.8%, somewhere between 1.5% to 2%, to certainly below 1%. And it's possible that we will have a recession now in South Africa itself. And on top of that, we've got our own political shenanigans that aren't making things any easier. I've spoken for a long time. I'd like to hand over to the other guest. Thank you.
Sure. All of that is really quite sobering. Before I give Opelisa a chance to come in, I want you just to speak on the impact that all of this is likely to have on South Africa, because you make a good point that where we are, we cannot avoid some of these external factors and the implications that they will have for us. At the same time, I mean, just yesterday in the Sunday Times, John Steenhuisen was quoted as saying that 1 trillion was wiped off the Johannesburg Stock Exchange as a result of the threat of the DA leaving the GNU. Now, statements like that just simply aren't factual. It's not true. How do we bring in the reality when there is so much political noise around the state of affairs that is not helping the situation either? Because as you've so clearly articulated, we are entering a period of global turmoil, and as a country we need to be alive to those possibilities.
You're absolutely correct that the wiping out of 1 trillion rand off the is it 1 trillion, did you say rand or dollars? It's a big difference. Off the value of the JSE took place, but it took place in line with the collapse of world markets all over the place. He was actually, in a sense, misinforming the public up to a point, but only up to a point. The fact is that in the preceding week, the rand fell from 18 rand 15 to 18 rand 85 to the dollar on account of concerns that the tiff over the budget would lead to the DA leaving the Government of National Unity. And since the formation of the Government of National Unity had been at the heart of the improvement in confidence in the South African economy, together with the absence of the end of load shedding last year, the combination of these two factors had led to a strengthening of the rand, a sharp decline in inflation, and an increased stability on the part of the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates so that it was conducive towards higher economic growth. Now, with the DA, if the Government of Unity, National Unity, were now to break up, this would have negative implications and result in a reversal of that confidence. And so the rand did lose ground on that basis up to a point. Then came Trump's announcement that led to mayhem on world markets, and that saw the rand losing further ground. And I see this morning we're close to 19 rand 40. So Steenhuisen was correct in highlighting the fact that breakup of the GNU had affected markets, mainly the exchange rate, but didn't account for the wiping off of 1 trillion rand off the stock exchange that emanated afterwards from the collapse in world markets that took place following Trump's announcement of tariffs involved.
All right. Thanks for that.
So it's a bit of both. But it was, in some respect, a misinformation. Absolutely.
Pelisa, let me give you a chance to come in. I mean, a part of what Azar has said has been incredibly sobering. The idea of a global recession and where South Africa would find itself already, our levels of growth as a country have resulted in the situations that we're facing today, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the state of our society. So the idea that our very low growth has now been revised downward, even beyond 1%, that is something that we should all be worried about. But maybe an opportunity for you just to give your own reflections on what this moment means for South Africa. And, we'll continue with this conversation on the other side of the headlines, of course, where you'll also have an opportunity to break down how we can also be responding to it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just to take a step back, by the way, that the trade preferential regime that was established by U.S., South Africa, and as well as the African continent, because, by the way, this conversation has to really take a Pan-Africanist outlook, because the reality is that if the African economy is actually being slapped with high tariffs and other African countries, as a migrant recipient country and the highly industrialized economy, one of the key things that's going to happen is that it's going to start receiving people from other African countries. So in essence, it means that we actually need to take a whole lot more holistic view when we reflect on this, and that's the first issue. I mean, the AGOA regime as a preferential trade system, at the heart of it was about correcting the structural imbalances within the global trade system, but also recognizing that some of the WTO trade agreements are really not in favor of African countries, are actually quite exclusionary, but also obviously the third one was also about really solidarity, right, and ensuring that African countries have access to the African market. So obviously the decision by Trump administration is actually an indication that they actually ignore almost all that hard work that has been undertaken in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, it was really the work of global civil society organizations who worked very hard, and well as governments who were committed into ensuring that there is a trade preferential system. When we talk about the impact are quite massive. I think they're linked even to the first point I made.
Pelisa, let me pause you there. I will give you a chance to continue shortly. Apologies for that. It is 10:30. Time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, details are emerging on a shooting incident along the Mohlahlana Road and Nape Avenue in Mufulo Central, Soweto. The three men who were gunned down are members of the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association. The case of a man accused of raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl in Orlando, Soweto has been transferred to the High Court in Johannesburg for pre-trial on the 9th of next month. And the British government is announcing a series of measures to support UK car manufacturers as the industry faces new US import tariffs. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 19 rand 34 to the dollar, 24 rand 93 to the pound, and 21 rand 30 to the euro. Markets in Asia were lower at the closing bell. The JSE has extended losses during mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe currently trading in the red. Gold is trading at $3,021, platinum $912 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $63.26 a barrel.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking at the U.S. tariff hikes and the implications of these for South Africa. Dr. Azar Jamim is our guest alongside Pelisa Nkomo. Pelisa, let me give you a chance to continue as you reflect on the impact of these tariff hikes.
Yes. So the point I was actually just making before we go on the break. So in essence, what this really means is that the South African economy is actually going to shrink because the 7.5% of our exports actually are actually exported to the U.S. market, while the U.S. market actually has even less than buys less than 1% from the trade relations between South Africa. The biggest issue, by the way, because if you then look at the different sectors into which are going to be affected, it's the automotive sector, it's the agricultural sector, right? It's the chemical sector, and now it's the nuts. I mean, the agricultural sector, by the way, if you start breaking it down, you look at the grape sector, you look at the nut sector. In fact, the nut sector exports 20% of their products to the U.S. So there are different sectors of the economy. And when you think about it, I mean, agricultural sector, if we stick there for a second, is that it's actually one sector that attracts both unskilled and semi-skilled workers. And over the years, by the way, it's also one of the sectors that has actually attracted a lot more non-South Africans in the sector. And what is also an indication, and I think I just want to ride on the point that Dr. Zai is actually making, is that, you know, the what is happening in the political arena versus what's happening in terms of international trade is actually means that it makes the African economy even a lot more vulnerable. Because the lack of political alignment in terms of what should be our fiscal framework be looking like would actually then impact on what becomes our posture in as far as these trade negotiations are concerned, because you need a lot more unanimity in terms of how to approach them, but also at the same time what new proposals, even in the negotiations with the U.S., is going to be. So specific things that are going to affect, I think jobs is actually going to be that one is actually, it's very clear, but also means that our economy broadly is going to shrink. But also there's another opportunity. I mean, because we must never waste a crisis. There's an opportunity for South Africa to really start looking at new markets, right? Particularly goods that are from the fresh produce, because the fresh produce, you're not going to be able to wait. If it gets, if one market cancels your order, you then have to urgently find more markets. So South Africa needs to really start, in fact, government needs to support the private sector to look for, to secure new markets. But also the third issue is to actually, this is, and hence I was saying earlier, there needs to be a lot more Pan-Africanist perspective that is embedded in this conversation, because then it means that Africans must really need to start trading with each other, even a lot more now. Because, I mean, Africa is not only a price taker even on commodities that it's endowed with, right? But it's also a price taker on finished goods, because we don't do value addition in the African continent. So in essence, for us, and I think there's something that Trump is actually pushing South Africa, but also as an African, that I think South Africa could take a lead, is to really looking at how do we actually do value addition or beneficiation of our primary products, so that we create jobs within the domestic market, build a resilient regional markets, and make it sure that we trade with each other within the African continent. So the timing, by the way, of the free trade agreements that several countries have signed in the last few years is actually quite a lot more important now, meaning that we need to really move out of the negotiation table, which really has actually taken us a long time. That Trump is actually creating that moment for that free trade agreement to really come alive.
Azar, when we look at what the potential entry points for the negotiation of any kind of trade deal with Washington, what the potential entry points might be, if we look at the tariffs on South Africa, what we also see is that it, of course, doesn't apply to all exports to the U.S. There are some exports that have been excluded, and these include some of the products that are needed for as inputs for production. What does this tell us about what the thinking of Donald Trump might be? Because, of course, there is that view that, he's a loose cannon and doing things without really thinking about it. But is that really the case when you sit down and you assess what it is that he's imposed tariffs on and what he hasn't, and potentially what that tells us about his strategy and what we could be using as an entryway into any kind
from these tariffs. Most notably, we produce auto catalysts, anti-pollutants made of platinum for input into cars in order to restrict the spread of carbon dioxide, and this helps neutralize. And these auto catalysts and the use of platinum and palladium in these, the U.S. is virtually totally reliant on South Africa for this. The only other major producer is Russia, and obviously the U.S. doesn't want to import the stuff from Russia as the alternative. And if you add then to some of the other exempt minerals, such as coal and iron ore, more than half of our exports to the U.S. have been exempted or not subject to these tariffs. It's only in respect of automotive where we are going to be hit quite hard, because around 6.5% of our car exports go to the United States. And in respect of wine and macadamia nuts and citrus. Now, you quite rightly suggested that we need to consider diversifying our markets. and that this might provide a nice opportunity to do so. But one should look at the broader picture, and that's what worries me more than anything, that the direct impact is not anywhere near as great as is being made out to be the case. It's the indirect impact that is really pernicious, and that is if China goes downhill, if America goes downhill, and through them Europe goes down, and the rest of the world goes down, we will feel the draft quite viciously from that. But yes, it does offer us an incentive and an opportunity to look for new markets for many of our products.
One would think that, Pelisa, given this outlook in as far as the global economy is concerned, that this should very much be informing even how we are structuring our budget in South Africa today, because, you know, what is going into the budget, it cannot be ignorant to the events of the last 2 weeks, if indeed they are going to be as significant as both you and Azar has mentioned. But do we have that agility? Do we have that flexibility in terms of how quickly we are able to adapt and respond to some of these issues? Because for me, one of the obvious questions becomes, so what do we need to be doing today to better cushion ourselves from a potential global recession and the implications of that for South Africa?
That's a very important point, Casey, because I do think that South African leaders, particularly those who are in Parliament, need to really be awake to these external shocks. I mean, I don't entirely share the sentiment that Dr. Azar says that this may not have an impact. I think it has an impact. The Trump tariffs have an impact at a sectoral level. I mean, the point I'm making is that if you talk about the nut sector, and to which 20% of their export goes to the U.S., already it means that the CEOs of that sector now are starting to stretch their heads looking for the new markets, but also the fact that once their product hits the market in the U.S. market, they're not going to be competitive anymore, right? And you're going to start seeing that impact at a sectoral level, particularly in the vulnerable sector. I mean, even in the auto sector, I mean, the auto sector in South Africa survives on the back of incentives. So in essence, part of the benefit of having U.S. demanding the automotive products in South Africa means that it kind of one way, it's a trade-off then, means that South Africa is able to recover the amount of public tax that it's investing to that sector. And it's able to keep about 40,000 jobs. But what also that means that the automotive sector products that goes into the U.S. are not going to be competitive. So meaning that the cars are likely to sit on the dealer shops, on the float show, a lot more longer than they used to be. So I think we are going to start seeing an immense impact at a sectoral level, which will have macroeconomic impact. I do share his sentiments that we have to look at the global sentiments that the showdown between U.S. and China would have, but by then that would have been a double dose for us because we would have paid the first price. But I think the second issue, Katie, which is very important to raising, is that I think part of what was happening in Parliament is what we would call a very inward-looking political agenda than actually really getting on the table, seeing leadership maturity and ensuring that there needs to be consensus on the back of the fact that if you are sitting with such high tariffs, how do you then begin to develop a fiscal framework that actually will lead into a resilient economy, but also fundamentally support entrepreneurs and businesses who want to make it sure that this economy still breathes during this period of the tariff imposition. So, for instance, I mean, if you look at the budget, one of the key issues we need to know is that 61% of this economy is held by 61% of SMEs, and it means that you need to channel funding to small medium enterprises, that's what politicians need to have consensus in, and look at what are the critical aspects of the fiscal framework that should actually go into industrial development support. And instead, we're bogged down with a lot more political chessboard where people were saying, if you don't pass that, this is what we do, but if you pass that, in return, this is what you need to give to us. So meaning that we've not seen an emergence of this political consensus in the name of the GNU, really looking at what are the domestic issues that we're interested in, but also what are the trade international pressures that we are actually confronted with, and how do we bring that into the table and making sure that we have a lot more consensus outside of political posturing, political interest, which are kind of like a very much linear in terms of focus. I mean, South Africans have not experienced a 3% growth of the economy since 2008, right? And now it's 2025. We've really been breathing through the wound of this economy. I mean, growing at 1%, 1.1%, which we had been creating, less than 1 million jobs. So you can imagine what it means. Black women in this country, 42%, are completely unemployed, relying on social security. Young people, I mean, more than 57% of young people lead socially and economically unproductive lives, basking in the sun. And that's a massive risk to actual society going forward. But also now we're seeing the numbers going up to almost 28 million South Africans right in the social security net. And the implication really, it means that you have South African citizens unto which if government is not able to raise sufficient taxes, those communities will go to bed without food, and they actually become a lot more vulnerable. And that's what you actually need from political parties, to recognize the contextual issues and find consensus on what they think would be their response. And we can't wait as citizens of this country for that national dialogue, because it's quite clear that political parties have linear understanding of what needs to be done. But I think what that needs to be done, ordinary South Africans are sitting with solid proposals on what needs to be done to really rescue this country, but also to actually rescue the deteriorating social fabric of this country. You and I, Cathy, cannot walk at night without fear of gender-based violence in this country.
If we look at the African Growth and Opportunity Act, and there've of course been, this debate over whether or not, South Africa should be worried if we stay, if we go, at what cost, in as far as our moral authority or moral standing is concerned. In your view, Pelisa, in light of these tariffs, is the point around AGOA now moot? Are there indications from the White House that there will be no renewal of AGOA across the board? Is that still a conversation that we should be pursuing and leading?
Well, I mean, firstly, it's true, AGOA is mute, but something that I think for trade relations and foreign policy we need to learn from this moment is that different administrations, I think, by the way, we know it even in South Africa or in other countries, different administrations post-elections always pursue their own policy priorities. And we have really been caught off guard regarding this. When Trump was in power 5 years before President Biden, there were signals about his attitude towards what he referred to as a trade safety basket for several countries. And we were hoping that he would be able to continue with it. And I think part of what Trump is actually sending as a clear message is that you can never be comfortable as a country with the certain administrations, both trade and foreign policy posture. You always have to make it sure that all the time you consistently look for new markets, you consistently look for new ideas, but you consistently build a resilient economy so that you are never caught off guard with this type of decisions. So that's the first lesson. I think the second lesson is that it means that now for South Africa as a highly industrialized country, and the point I was making earlier, is that it could actually take a lead and be a thought leader on what sectors of the economy for South Africa we need to immediately in the next 18 months begin to help, and which were always classified as an infant industry, right? And this is what other African countries need to do, because of course, some of these interventions at a national level, you're not going to be able to pursue them without a proper trade coordination with other African countries. So there needs to be a lot more conversation. And South Africa is in a strategic position with its G20 leadership, that it can get African leaders into the table anytime and say, what is it that we need to do? And it must use this moment of G20 leadership to make sure that it intensifies that trade, those trade, inter-trade relations within the African continent.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Azar, I want you to respond to the same question when we come back.
The Saints are pumped up to fight even harder in search of 3 points on home ground.
And Smallbone has scored his first Premier League goal. Liverpool stood like statues.
Meanwhile, the Villains are chasing a win to secure a decent top half spot.
Tielemans to Rashford. Rashford fires it in. Oh, it's gone in! It's turned over by Marco Asensio again. 2 from him, 2 for Aston Villa, and 3 points surely.
This is the Premier League. Experience the thrilling encounter between Southampton FC and Aston Villa FC on Saturday, 12 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We continue the conversation looking at the impact of the U.S. tariff hikes on South Africa. Azar, let me give you a chance to maybe come in on that question around AGOA, whether any negotiations in that regard, particularly around maintaining South Africa's position in it, or even just as an agreement overall, if that has now become moot, if it's still worth pursuing.
Personally, I think that it's not really worth pursuing, that the government should, and I think the Minister of International Relations alluded to that these tariffs that were imposed by Trump on Wednesday actually supersede AGOA. And AGOA is now not particularly relevant anymore. And I think that South Africa, there may be a point in trying to negotiate a new deal. They would then have to lift what are actually fairly limited import tariffs on U.S. goods. One of the factors that has completely confused our authorities is how the Americans got to this figure of 30% tariffs, which was half of the 60% tariff rate that they originally calculated South Africa was benefiting from. But what they don't realize is that most of this trade surplus is attributable precisely to the fact that we are exporting platinum group metals and in particular auto catalysts to the US that they can't get from elsewhere. So it's natural that we end up having a big trade surplus with the US. And they are not attacking those goods. They're attacking all the other goods where we do need a little bit of extra competitiveness provided by tariff relief in order to be competitive in the US. At the same time, I think this doesn't stop us actually looking for new markets for our cars and for our nuts, especially macadamia nuts, and for our wine. And I think there are plenty of opportunities in other countries to actually try and market our product. And with the rand as weak as it is right now, I think there's a good opportunity to try and be competitive in that regard. You've also got to bear in mind that we are not the only ones who are suffering an inability to export to the US. So, there could be a ganging up of everyone else to try and help one another to overcome the problems and to isolate the US in terms of its trade.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ruben, you're calling us from Bombela. You want to weigh in here. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Cathy, we have the platinum group metals in Zimbabwe, South Africa. That belt has got the world's largest platinum PGMs. Secondly, I want to understand from your guests, we are at the moment talking about the 30% tariff that has been imposed. There's also this understanding that the BRICS are having their BRIC Development Bank, which will later, in a very subtle way, de-dollarize their economy. And Trump has already voiced his understanding that should the BRICS countries come up with their own currency or their own payment methodology different from the dollar, he will impose another 150% tariffs. I would like to hear from your guests what is their understanding of the value and the impact of the BRIC currency or the BRICS currency going their own route in the form of paying for whatever they are trading amongst themselves.
All right. Thanks for the question, Ruben. I don't know who wants to go for it. Pelisa, do you want to give it a go?
Absolutely. I really love that question because that's true. I mean, the mining belt in the SADC region, that sits in almost about 3 to 4 countries. And South Africa should have actually provided leadership long time ago because we have industrial capabilities, both from a manufacturing of capital equipment, which in fact at some point we used to have a market share of about 85%. And now, of course, because of Chinese imports, it's gone down to almost just below 50%. But we still have an advantage to coordinate the value addition and make it sure that there are several products that could be manufactured within the region. And all we need to do is we need to rise above national interest. And I think for me, I'm saying that the positive aspect about Trump's tariffs is that Trump wants entrepreneurs to be supported by government, but he also wants countries to be able to build their own resilient economies. There's also something else that Trump is negotiating for in his own domestic market. He's negotiating for companies that have actually globalized their footprint to come back home into the U.S. and prioritize U.S. And I think there's an opportunity for us to access that. We have sufficient human capital, we have financial resources, we have land, we have the resources that we need. And we have even engineers in this region. I mean, in 5 to 6 countries that could coordinate this thing. I mean, we have even Angola on our back to actually that has the old commodities. So I do not understand why in the SADC region we're sitting with a regional industrial development strategy that is gathering dust. It's been sitting for almost 10 to 12 years. Not a single country has moved in. And I think for me, it's really the moment for us. And South Africa could provide that leadership because it does not only have experience, but it has the financial resources. And all we just need to do is to get all of us as the region to have the high risk appetite, to start trusting each other and work together. And you'll see less political instability that you're experiencing in Mozambique and as well as DRC. And you're going to see a lot more economic stability across several countries within the region.
As we wrap the conversation up then, I'm just wondering, with all of the measures and the countermeasures, what should we do? What is our strength here as South Africa? What is our negotiating power? What is the leverage that we're working with?
Our major strength is the fact that we've got these critical minerals that the United States doesn't have and is dependent upon. And somehow we need to leverage off that and just explain to them that that is the key reason why we're running a big trade surplus with them, and that imposing tariffs on our other goods, but leaving the minerals that they need critically exempt is actually not a particularly ethical way of dealing with this situation. I don't know that we can do very much more. All I am suggesting is that we need to try and find new markets for the goods that are going to be negatively affected, and I think there is an opportunity to do so. And yes, deal civilly with the Americans, but I really don't think that our future lies with our relations with the United States anymore.
Sure. Perhaps that's more telling than anything, right? That it's about time we look elsewhere in as far as those relationships are concerned. But certainly the U.S. might not be the door that we have to keep knocking on, at least reflections of Azaj Amin, and I think very much Phelisan Nkomo, who's also emphasized the need for new markets. So one wonders then, the trade envoys, is it worth it? Buying flights, booking accommodation, going to the U.S. to negotiate, or maybe it's just find other countries, book flights to other destinations, go and build new relationships, seems to be some of the thinking of the day. All right, we're going to take the latest news update. I'm back with more on the other side of this.
In our top stories, 3 men shot dead in Soweto, and Britain unveils a support package for the car industry. Good morning. Details are emerging on a shooting incident along the Mahalefele Road and Nape Avenue in Mufulo Central, Soweto. The 3 men who were gunned down are members of the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association. The motive for the killings is unknown. Johannesburg Metro Police spokesperson Xolani Fihla has this advice for motorists following the incident.
Expect potential road closures, traffic diversions and increased congestion in the area as authorities manage the scene, and motorists are advised to avoid Mahalefele Road towards Mufulo Central, and coming from Dube, motorists are advised to use Mncube Drive, Leselinyana and Ginini Street to get to Machaba Drive, and from Zulu Drive, motorists can use Machaba Drive as alternative routes.
The case of a man accused of raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl in Orlando, Soweto, has been transferred to the High Court in Johannesburg for a pre-trial on the 9th of next month. The 24-year-old Mozambican national Pete Simau was arrested last year, appeared in the Protea Magistrates Court this morning. He faces charges of kidnapping, rape, murder and contravening the Immigration Act. National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson Pindim Jonondwane is confident they have a watertight case against the accused.
We are ready to present a formidable case before the High Court. We have concluded the process of consultation. We have lined up our witnesses, and the commitment that we can give is that justice will be delivered.
The trial within a trial to determine the admissibility of the accused in the Jocelyn Smith kidnapping and human trafficking trial is expected to resume in the High Court in Saldanha Bay in the Western Cape today. Chakwina Polis, Davino van Rijn and Jocelyn's mother Kelly Smith are on trial for disappearance in February last year. Mbali Chomfa reports.
Accused Jacquinopolis and Stefano van Rijn gave their statements between the 4th and 5th of March last year. They however contend that the statements were given under duress and that they were tortured by police into making the so-called confessions. In his statement, van Rijn says he accompanied Opolis on the 19th of February last year to take Jocelyn to the home of Makalima on the instructions of Kelly Smith. He says they left the child there and that he did not see her again. According to Opolis' statement, on the Sunday before the child went missing, Kelly Smith told him she was tired side of Jocelyn's father, wanting her to give them the child.
The African Peer Review Mechanism and the African Union Peace and Security Council will hold a 2-day annual joint retreat in Johannesburg today. This as the continent grapples with a number of conflicts, including in the eastern DRC, Sudan and South Sudan. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
The fourth APRM and PSC joint retreat is expected to focus on the role of the African Peer Review Mechanism in early warning and contributing towards conflict prevention and strengthening good governance in the continent. Delegates will also reflect on challenges undermining efforts for peace and security in Africa. Some of the prominent speakers include AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Bankole Adoye, APRM Head Ambassador Mary Antoinette Rose Quatre, and Public Service and Administration Minister Nkosi Mzamo Buthelezi.
And finally, the British government is announcing a series of measures to support UK car manufacturers as the industry faces new US import tariffs. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the new era of global instability means the government must go further and faster to increase growth. The BBC's Damien Grammaticus reports.
Changes to the rules around the transition to electric vehicles were already being discussed long before Donald Trump's tariffs were announced. But the government says to help protect jobs, it is confirming that while sales of new petrol and diesel cars will end in 2030, interim targets for electric vehicle sales in the years before then are being relaxed. In addition, it will be possible to sell hybrid vehicles combining petrol or diesel with an electric motor until 2035, and small car makers such as Aston Martin and McLaren will be exempt from the rules.
Recapping the top story, details are emerging on a shooting incident in Mufulo Central in Soweto. The 3 men who were gunned down are members of the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, 2 raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morrell. Plus, Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy. I mean, for the US to increase the tariff rates on us, our president mustn't panic because he got all the tools, but he looks like a panic mechanic. What he needs to tell the US is that he needs to remind them of their goods coming to South Africa, of their companies in South Africa, your KFC, your McDonald's, everything that has to do with America. So it's a 50-50 situation here. We can lose the US, we can have other European countries. As long as America has got companies here, we must charge also the same tariff that they charge on us. Brian by Protectland. Thanks for the great show, Cathy.
Morning, Katie. Katie, I'm really confused with South Africa. We've got a BRICS, and then I think another 5 countries with a big population, with good economies. Why don't we go and trade there? Go and trade there. Why keep on begging Trump and America? Let's go to those countries. Dubai, it's quite big. That region, Brazil, India, China. You're talking about almost 2 billion, 3 billion populations combined in the BRICS. We can trade there, Kathy, not anywhere else. Let's go and trade there. Stop Trump. Trump is a madman, that one. It's Mzin Bloemfontein.
Good morning, Kathy and the guests. My suggestion on the way forward, based on the what is happening with South Africa and the US, is that we have tried the diplomatic route. It has failed. They have expelled the South African ambassador to the US. I believe that we should be looking into other markets, markets such as China, markets such as Japan, or Asia in general. We should be looking at Europe. We should be looking at your France. We should be looking at Germany. We should also be looking at the UK. And even Europe has reaffirmed their support for South Africa and its government. So we are still on good footing. As far as the Trump and Elon Musk administration, that ship has long sailed.
Good morning, Cathy. It's a pity that in Africa we lack leadership. The way forward for Africa, in my opinion, is for SADC to adopt a monetary union like the Europeans did with the euro, and have one currency in SADC and have one central bank in SADC, and South Africa should be given the authority to issue this one currency, because we're the only country in Africa that has successfully implemented inflation targeting, and have a well-managed central bank in the whole of Africa. And I think that would unlock opportunities in Africa for South African companies to invest more in Africa. And there would be more demand for South African products in Africa that way. Thanks, Lionel Woodbank.
Morning, Cathy and the listeners. This is Magdalene from Bloom. Cathy, I like the response of the lady who is in your panel to the first caller. Trump is not in hatred to anyone, but Trump is focused. What he promised to the Americans is what he is doing. Because by the time he was out of the office, he reviewed all the things that are distracting the economy of America. And he came up with the promise that once he gets into the office, he will ensure that the GDP of America get growth, and the beneficiaries should be the Americans. And that's what Trump is doing. And that he ensure that whatever distract the economy of America will be getting rid of. And that is what he's doing. He's already teaching us that we need to be consistent to what we are promising to each other. Magdalene from Bloom, thank you.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen. #SAFM Talking Point.
Well, thank you for all of that feedback and your reflections on what it is that we need to be doing as a country going forward. And absolutely, the point I think has been made. It's about time we start looking elsewhere if we are to secure future markets for ourselves, our products and goods. So these are all the things, right, that our country's leadership should be contending with right now. These are the things that we should be grappling with to ensure that our economy is protected against some of these headwinds that are unfortunately also out of our control. Well, the final conversation then for this morning is looking at the process of the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel. Where are they with the work that they've been doing? You'll remember that that particular consultation panel was formed to independently investigate, consult, and make recommendations in respect of elections to be held after 2024. So just this past week, they've noted growing calls for a constituency-based voting system in South Africa. This is based on the written submissions that the panel has received so far for proposals for an electoral system. This is with regard to what kind of electoral system we need to have in the country. Tomzi Dlamini is a member of the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel, joins us on the line. Good morning and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and your listeners. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask if you can please just put your handset just closer to where you're speaking, because we are struggling to pick you up there. But let's see if we can continue without any more difficulty. Let's first look at the work that you have started then, in terms of, number one, investigating the elections, at least in as far as what it is that we need to be looking at for the future of elections in this country. What has gone into your work so far? All right. Unfortunately not. The line to you isn't great. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We're going to try and get Ms. Dlamini back up on a different line.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Tomzi Dlamini is our guest. She's a member of the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel. Ms. Dlamini, good morning again.
Good morning, Cathy. Is it clearer now?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. So as I was saying, maybe if you can just give us a sense of what has gone into your work since the panel was constituted.
Okay, just to, reflect on the work of the panel, you will recall that we embarked on a whole research on, what potential reforms might be considered for the electoral system of South Africa. And then we moved on to launch a discussion paper. Now, that discussion paper, what the purpose of the discussion paper was just to outline the work of the panel, but also to kind of give parameters and context into what we're going into, the input, the contributions from South Africans, when they comment or when they make their contributions on the electoral system and the potential reforms that they would like to see, if any. So that was launched and it was distributed, and then we started off with, of course, inviting, written submissions. I think that's an old story that everybody is now aware of. And the written submissions, the initial closing date was 30th of September, which was then extended by another 30 days. So we have received quite a substantial amount of written submissions, and then we went all the 9 provinces now to get input from different sectors, academia, CSOs, general public organizations, and after that, in all the 9 provinces. And in the provinces, Cathy, what we did was we had to do one rural area and one urban area. And how those areas were selected, we were guided by the provincial legislatures because we are very, we are so into doing public participation. So they were assisting us in terms of identifying the most central location for, both rural and urban public consultation. So we have collected a substantial amount of inputs from the general public, from organizations, from different sectors. So that is where we are at. And now, what we are currently doing is we're preparing now for an international conference, which is now going to be what I call the last leg of collecting and collecting input on comments and contributions on whatever reforms, potential reforms that might be for South Africa. So this international conference is planned for the 9th and the 10th of April. It's a 2-day conference, and I don't know if you want me to speak to the purpose of the conference or if I can stop there for now. And let me just stop there, and then I'll explain further on the purpose and the objective of the conference.
All right. I'm happy for us to pause there. I've got a break coming up. We'll continue shortly.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. #SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. Tomzi Dlamini is a member of the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel, and she's sharing just some of what they've been able to uncover in the work that they're doing to look at, what elections in South Africa should look at or should look like. This is post the 2024 national election. So if we can then just start briefly with just the recommendations, the submissions that you have received so far. It seems that a lot of South Africans have made it clear that they would want an electoral system where elected representatives are accountable to them as the electorate and not necessarily to political party structures. Is that fair and in line with the data that you've collected so far?
Cathy, that is true. The submissions that we have received so far, I mean, people are expressing their views and their opinions and their preferences to say they would rather elect their own representatives, as opposed to the current system where we have party lists, and understanding that party lists are the prerogative of political parties to, table their list, their candidates, in ranking them in their order of the party's preference. But quite a number of, the input that we have received is that they would rather, people would rather elect their own, identify their own candidates because they are representatives, because then it kind of gives them a sense, it would give them a sense of, remember, I elected you, I identified you as my representative, therefore there would also be that sense of accountability. And that element of accountability, which is also one of the principles that the ERCP identified critical, among others, is that, most of the people were saying that they don't even know who their representatives in the National Assembly is. They don't even know how those people came to be. So, and even for provincial legislatures, for that matter, so they would rather have the prerogative to be the ones who identify them, rank them in their own order, in short, the party list, which is a closed party list at the moment, should rather be open and let the public, South Africans themselves, be the ones who identify those representatives for the sake of accountability, but also to also try and bring them closer, because another element, the other side of this accountability issue, it speaks to constituencies. People are thinking that if they knew who their representative is for particular constituencies, then maybe there would be a stronger sense of accountability and connectivity between the citizen and that representative. And I think maybe let me also just remind us that the ERCP's work is only looking at the provincial and the National Assembly elections, not local government, only national and provincial, National Assembly and provincial legislatures. That is all. Yes, Cathy.
What else would you say has been notable in as far as the submissions from South Africans?
The other thing that is notable is South Africans are well, from what we have heard so far, they are relatively concerned also about, some of the parties that are representing them, that are on at the national or even provincial assembly. That some of them, they only hold like one seat, and they ask themselves, the question that came up is, what is it that they actually do with that one seat? What impact do they really make? So there was, what can you call it, like a sense of people wake up and they think of forming a political party, and then they go in there and it's like a career, as opposed to being there as a general representative of South Africa. So that too was also raised, as mentioned, as a concern, but also like the issue of the electoral system. They feel that this proportion, the current the current proportional representation that we have for national and provincial assembly, they even say it's way too democratic. And I know some, even though it was only a handful, just a few that even spoke about why don't we just have a winner takes all. But that one did not really get so much traction, as much as, yes, they would like to see this proportionality, but instead of having it so open, should we not even consider having some form of a threshold to say, okay, currently South Africa doesn't use a threshold, by the way, in terms of once elected, what is the threshold in the quota? Will it allow me to go in, or once I have a seat, and that's it? But we would rather now say, even though you have that one seat, say maybe 40,000 votes allow you that one seat, but do you really qualify? So they were talking about even recommending like a 1% threshold for those parties who have already been to allow representation, instead of just opening it widely. Okay, now that you have been elected, you have your 40,000, it's okay, you go through. No, they want a further threshold to that, to say you cannot just say you are representing South Africans with only one seat in parliament or even in the provincial legislature. Let that be another layer that should kind of justify or qualify you, a criterion that will qualify that representative to take a seat either at the provincial legislature or at the National Assembly. So those were the ones that came up pretty strong. The other issue that they were raising about this issue of too many political parties represented in parliament and not necessarily justifying their representation was this: it exerts a lot of weight on the fiscus, And for that reason, they were thinking, truly and honestly, that amount that goes to that one show party or those parties that have very low few number of seats, it should be reconsidered why they are there, because so that to release the funding that actually goes to them, which can be used for the many needs of South Africa. So those ones were really, accountability, of course, is, I think I mentioned that one. But those were the things that were coming out pretty strong.
Okay.
In the submission so far.
We'll continue the conversation shortly, and I wonder, just based on the reflections on the submissions so far, it does seem to point to a South African electorate that wants greater accountability, perhaps even more direct access in terms of how it's able to exercise that accountability on office bearers or those that have been elected into positions of public office and public power. We'll continue this conversation shortly. For now, it's 11:30. Here's a look at your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Cathy. Good morning. I'm Kulufelo Tefo with the headlines. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says for the Democratic Alliance to stay in the GNU, they would have to support the budget. He was speaking to the media after delivering the keynote address at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation Legacy Business Breakfast in Ilovo, Johannesburg this morning. Details are emerging on a shooting incident along the Mohlahlana Road and Nabe Avenue in Mufolo Central in Soweto. The three men who were gunned down are members of the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association. And further afield, Asian markets have sunk further into the red on Monday as traders react to President Trump's import tariffs. Details at 12.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the talking point, looking at some of the submissions made so far to the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel on what the country's electoral system should look like going forward. Where should the changes or where should the reform actually come in? Tomzi Dlamini is a member of that particular panel. What's clear to me, Ms. Dlamini, is the fact that South Africans obviously are looking for greater accountability. And perhaps the question is, how does that accountability then come in as far as the electoral system that we subscribe to? As you sit and you look at the feedback as a panel, where would you say that people are looking at or pointing to as perhaps being the areas that need to be unlocked to ensure this greater accountability? And ultimately, how different would our electoral system need to look in order for people to feel that accountability will be more realizable?
Cathy, I think we need to understand that an electoral system on its own might not have, the solutions that we are probably looking at to all of our problems. But I would just like us to have a throwback on, the other panels that were also established, to look at the electoral system of South Africa. And one of them was, if you will recall, was one that was chaired by former MP Prex Governor, who was looking at the functioning of Parliament, because this issue of accountability it's not the first time that it comes up from all the previous panels that kind of looked at the electoral system. And former MP Governor's responsibility was to look at the extent to which Parliament could ensure that there's accountability and responsiveness and openness regarding implementation of matters, that people are concerned about today. And one of the things that came up there was again the relationship between Parliament and voters and the executive, the relationship of, which obviously oversight is also a method and a mechanism of looking at accountability and ensuring that those people elected in those official public offices are accountable to the constituencies and to the representatives to South Africa. In the issue of the party list, as South African groups, they are saying that it is intended to promote accountability of members of parliament, more to their political parties, as opposed to the electorate. So that is still a bone of contention to this. Now, you will also, if you look at these parties, a number of the representatives, a number of South Africans, when making their input, say, these people don't even notice, they don't even care about it. They only think of us as the electorate when it comes to elections, but once they get to parliament, they just enjoy what it is that they are enjoying and their benefits. But in terms of what our needs are, it is very difficult to hold them accountable. And as a result, as electorate, we're not even able. Some of them, we don't even know how they got there because we have always felt that they had failed from one public office, but now they have been moved to another public office because the kind of electoral system that we have and the party list that is managed by political parties is only the prerogative. And it looks like it's just sacrosanct to political parties. So that is still a bone of contention. And I promise you, even if we were to look at different electoral systems, they want smaller constituencies where they are going to identify their own representatives, where they are going to rank their own representatives in order of their own preference, basically having like an open list kind of system. But it is varied, Cathy. I have to mention that it is varied. It's not in every consultation process where we got that input. Some will say, just leave the system as it is. What we do not want to lose is the element of proportionality. Whatever happens to whatever reforms come up, we do not want to lose proportional representation. So for that reason, you will realize already from the values and from the preferences that are coming out, it's a very mixed kind of bag. We probably would like to see a mixed member constituency, Some are content with the proportional representation as it is, and some are even recommending that when we say mixed member, they're talking like we have in local government. The biggest issue is they say for members of National Assembly and provincial legislatures, there is no mechanism of recall if that public office bearer is not delivering or not performing. It is only left to the political party to make that decision. And they want to have that in their hands, So, those are some of the nuances that are coming up. But also, what is also coming up is, the fact that even some members of parliament, if they probably want to, as they compile their list, some of them are probably holding back to criticize, why are you listing this particular person? Because this one is not even a true reflection of what the party believes in. So they are scared. They fear that if they criticize the executive too much, they themselves might end up being excluded from the party list. So there are also those nuances. And remember, they're speaking to political parties themselves. And some of them are members of those political parties, so they know the inside of how those party lists also are compiled, how they come about. They might not all be in agreement with the format or the listing of those candidates. But people have mentioned that some of them are just scared to point out and to criticize that some of these people they are not a true reflection of the values of those political parties.
Is that not the elephant in the room then, Tomsi? Is that not at the heart of the bone of contention then?
It certainly is. It certainly is. But we are going to, put it all in the report, and it's going to be left to the, Parliament to then make a decision on the various options, because the inputs and of the contributions that we collected from the public, we're not going to hold anything back. It's all going to be in there. It's all going to be analyzed. And in some instances, obviously, you might find that, bearing in mind the terms of reference of the ERCP, that there might be some constitutional amendments that may be required. We don't know, because we are still analyzing the input that has been coming up, and we still have this conference on 9 and 10. So all of that will still be put together before we actually put the different options to Parliament for them. To the minister, for him to table it as for further discussion. Now, what I'm actually saying here is that one of the things that also came up, Cathy, that I shouldn't forget to mention is we are going to send this to Parliament. These are the very politicians who would like to protect the status quo. How can we trust that there will be any reforms at all? Now, we cannot, the ERCP, as a member of the ERCP, I cannot, and none of us can preempt what the decision of the politicians is going to be. We are only carrying out our mandates, but I would like to also raise the fact there has been, issues of trust that we know where this process will end up, if our contributions are going to be taken seriously. And I think got this in most of the conversations where we went. It came up very clear, issues of trust, trusting the custodians, the policy decision makers, because the panel can only report. We're just messengers. We take what we have received, analyze it to the best of our ability, present those options as expressed by the public, and then the parliamentarians, the politicians, will then have to make that decision. But if it comes up, we don't know if we should even trust the process at all. But we assure them that we will not shortchange them on what they have put forward to the panel.
Do you get a sense that how your report will be received will be any different to the previous panels that have been hosted? Like you're saying, and it's an important point, that this is not the first time that such reflections have been shared. Even leading up to the 2024 elections, there was similar work undertaken, and no doubt similar reflections shared there. But still not enough done to sort of bring that on board in time for the elections, which is why then another panel was constituted.
Cathy, I think maybe let's look at without necessarily drawing parallels with the previous commissions. The previous commission, I think, have as much latitude and time as the current ERCP. This one is now, it resulted. It was established because of the case that was presented by the Nation, the New Nation judgment, if you remember, together with the Ministerial Advisory Committee on the electoral system reform, it came about because when the New Nation just came out. It was about the constitutionality of excluding independence. So that is how this ERCP was then established. The other panels were not, they were not, so maybe for that reason, we might we are different. This ERCP is different in that sense. And also the time frame that was given to the other, it was very short. This one has been given like a year to make this amendment and to submit the report within the period. And from the 2024, from the May 29, 2024 election. So for that reason, I would like to believe that the fact that it is now in law, maybe there's going to be, it will gain impetus and traction with politicians to look into implementation of the Electoral Act, Section 23 of the amended Electoral Act 2024, so 2023. So for that reason, I would like to believe that there will be that interest to make sure what comes out of this process is followed up, because the fact that the court judgment came out and said includes independent candidates for the 2024 elections, and it did take place. So I don't think that it, I'd like to believe that clearly with the outcomes of this, of the options and the recommendations that the ERCP will make, they will be taken into consideration and will be acted upon. Remember that these reforms, Cathy, will be implemented, must be implemented for the 2029 national and provincial elections. So that commitment, I would like to believe that even our policy decision makers will take that one seriously. If they took the judgment seriously, indeed include candidates for the 2024 election, national and provincial elections, I'd like to believe that the same, the reforms and the options, whichever shape and form they take, will be taken into account for the 2029 elections. Cathy?
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on to the show this morning. Tomzi Dlamini, member of the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel. As you heard, their work still not yet done. It is ongoing. But yeah, South Africans have certainly been pointing to where the points of tension, right, where the points of weaknesses in the current electoral system are and what it is that they would want to see change. Okay, on that note, it brings us to the end of the Talking Point, at least for this Monday edition. The show is back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Coming up next is the book reading.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
What does the data suggest to support you describing it as a pandemic? And you've just done that.
Every day in South Africa, at least 15 women are murdered, and then 117 women report rape cases to the police. So that on itself just gives you a small picture of why we say that it is a pandemic. That's just a summary, the fact that we're rape capital of the world.
That's Bulelwa Adonis, the Women for Change spokesperson.
You're listening to the National Pulse. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book The Thing with Zola by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase.
If that wasn't love, Oguhle didn't know what was. But now he was gone again. It made no sense. What had changed? When her Uber arrived, Oguhle climbed in, settled herself, and tried to call Mbali again. This time, he answered. "You checked out of the recovery center," he said, skipping past the usual greetings. Oguhle couldn't tell if he was tired, angry, or both. It was clear that he wasn't pleased. I need to go to work, Oguhle said stubbornly. You know I can't afford to mess up this expo. My mom will kill me. Your mom, Mbali breathed a sigh. Oguhle, I've been hearing some things. What exactly have you been telling her? Oguhle paused to think. She hadn't told her mother anything that wasn't true. She gushed about how well Mbali was taking care of her, how things finally looked like they were coming together. Nothing else. I just told her she didn't have to worry because you were taking care of me, Oguhle said. Then why did she tell my mother we were back together? Mbali said angrily. And why are my parents both on my case about getting married? Oguhle flinched. Even though it was her dearest wish, she recognized that Mbali's buttons had been pushed. The last thing she wanted was to scare him off, even though she told her mother how good she'd felt about Mbali, how everything had felt so right between them. She hadn't specifically said they were back together. Mbali, I'm not crazy. I wouldn't make up something like that. And neither would my mom. I think it's a misunderstanding, a broken telephone. You know how excitable they all are. And they've been planning our wedding since we were infants. They were just saying what they've been hoping to hear. Mbali took a breath to steady himself. Maybe this was his moment to come clean. It wasn't ideal. It would be more decent to do it in person, but he wasn't sure how much longer he could wait, especially as far as Zola was concerned. He really wanted to take that further. The whole Gunter situation was enough of an obstacle. He didn't need an Oguhle situation as well. And now Zola had asked to meet him and Oguhle together. It would really be best if Oguhle heard it like this first. Oguhle, you know I care about you. Mbali's voice became gentle. And I'll always be there for you. I can't love you the way you want me to. Oguhle gasped. She hadn't been expecting Mbali to blow up at her about their parents' gossip, but this turn of events was absolutely unacceptable to her. What? She didn't care that the Uber driver nearly jumped out of his seat at her sudden change of mood. Mbali, are you incapable of love? Do you have some kind of deficiency that makes it impossible to think about anyone but yourself? Because it definitely looks that way. The driver switched off the radio, but Oguhle didn't care who heard her. I haven't even made it home from hospital, and you're tearing me down. What is wrong with you? Mbali had known Oguhle would fight back. Their normal pattern was that she would blame him for everything, and he would accept that blame if that's what it took to be understood. But the pain in her voice still made him feel guilty. He considered taking it all back, but he knew he had done that too many times, and it had never made anything better. Things had only got much, much worse. Am I unlovable? She continued, now whispering. Maybe there's something wrong with me. No, Hlehle, there's probably something wrong with me. Mbali soothed as if speaking to a small child. And that shouldn't be your problem. You're a gorgeous, smart, successful woman. You deserve so much more than the half-baked life I would give you. I love you enough to know that. Through her self-pity, Oguhle saw red. Mbali wasn't thinking about her at all. As usual, it was all about him, all about what he wanted. It didn't matter to him that all she wanted was him. Anyway, she could have him. And what if I was happy with half-baked love? What if that was enough for me? Oguhle tried not to cry. She'd always shed too many tears over Mbali, and this was not the time to be weak. This was her chance to fight for the dream she had for the both of them. But I wouldn't be happy, Mbali admitted. I know I've hurt you. I've done many things I shouldn't have, but I deserve to be happy too. And spending the rest of my life being not good enough, not loving you enough, not giving you enough of me, I couldn't stand it. Breathing heavily, Oguhle felt she was on the verge of a panic attack as Mbali continued his speech. You know better than anyone how much my parents' marriage has messed me up. I don't want to make the same mistakes. I don't want to be like my father, constantly hurting the woman I claim to love. Mbali confessed, I'm sure you've heard about my mother's latest trip. I don't want you to have to take trips to Bali to recover from being married to me. Oguhle's mother had always said as much, and now Mbali was finally admitting his family's dysfunction. But for Oguhle, it was already too late for him to try and protect her. She already needed the trip to Bali. She already needed to recover. Is that what you were thinking when you sent another woman my favorite flowers, knowing full well I'd see them? Oguhle asked. You knew that would hurt me, but you did it anyway. Of all the women in the world, it had to be Zola, my newest employee. Mbali sucked in a sharp breath. Oguhle's words stung, and yes, on some level he had known that what he was doing was wrong. But he hadn't been able to help himself. He'd already decided that he wanted Zola before Oguhle had even hired her. And, if he was honest with himself, Oguhle's feelings were nothing more than collateral damage. But Oguhle, before it was Zola, it was someone else. You would have been hurt either way. I didn't hurt you by sending Zola flowers. I hurt you by lying to you. Mbali admitted. I thought I was doing the right thing, that eventually you would figure it out and move on, but I was wrong. You can hate me for that. I had it coming. I should never have promised you that we'd end up together. Even then, I knew we wouldn't. For Oguhle, this was too much. All her words seemed to boil in her throat, and all she could do was breathe into the phone. On his side of the line, Mbali held his phone to his ear, listening to her breathing and not saying anything. They sat like that as the Uber drove through the city towards Oguhle's house. Oguhle sitting in the back seat feeling shattered. She wanted so badly to hate Mbali, to despise him, but all the love she'd packed away in her heart for all these years made that impossible. I'm now home, Mbali, she said as the Uber parked outside her house. Do you need anything? Mbali asked dutifully. I need a trip to Bali, Oguhle said, finally hanging up. Oguhle dragged her suitcase into her house, pain shooting through her arm and up her neck with every step. This was not the time to be weak. She would have liked to have stayed at the recovery center a while longer, but she had to do work. The African Wedding Expo wouldn't organize itself. Chapter 22. Nothing but the truth. Zola's heart pounded in her chest. Every morning when she came to work, she expected to see Oguhle. Luckily for Zola, although Oguhle sent regular emails relating to the expo and to work in general, she hadn't been to the office all week. Zola was relieved. She didn't know how she would act around her after she'd asked to sit with her and Mbali to have that very uncomfortable conversation. For her part, Oguhle's emails did seem different. To start with, she stuck to emailing only during working hours, and Zola had been able to leave the office on time every day. And there were neither friendly remarks nor jealous attacks, just clean, clear professionalism, which oddly enough felt cold compared to Oguhle that Zola had first met.
That was another episode of the book The Thing with Zola, written by Zibu Sithole, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online at www.penmacmillan.co.za and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase. Technical production, Wiseman Manmele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. A very warm welcome to Update at Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour,
we will work with those who go all the way with us. We need a budget to get South Africa working.
Deputy President Paul Mashatile has emphasized the importance of the GNU mandate to make South Africa work.
What we do know is that the three individuals who are deceased are water taxi marshals, so it could be suspected due to taxi violence.
Police are investigating 3 murder cases following the fatal shooting of 3 men in Soweto. And coming up in sport...
What a weekend. Blitzbox disappointing, as do the Sharks, but it was some highs and lows. And where will my soundbite of the week go?
I can't wait. Welcome back, John Gericke. Back with your sports news in the second half of the show. In the meantime, please share your views with us. Our SMS line number is 41391. You will be charged R1.50 per SMS. You can also write to us via X at SABC News_radio or send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Monday edition of Update at Noon. First, though, is the latest news with Kulufelo Tefo.
Thanks, Sakina. Top stories. This hour, DA told to support budget to remain in the GNU, and Asian markets plunge following Trump tariffs. Good afternoon. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says for the Democratic Alliance to stay in the government of national unity, they would have to support the budget. He was speaking to the media after delivering the keynote address at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation Legacy Business Breakfast in Ilovo, Johannesburg this morning. This ahead of the ANC National Working Committee meeting to discuss the way forward for the GNU. The DA, following their FedEx meeting, indicated that they want to remain as a part of the GNU. The ANC's biggest GNU partner, the DA, last week voted against the adoption of the budget tabled by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Mashatile elaborates.
They must vote for the budget. They must come and support it. Remember, we are not done. We're just voting for the fiscal framework. The appropriation bill is coming. There are a lot of money bills that are lined up coming. So now that they've not voted for the fiscal framework, it set the tone of what they will do with the appropriation bill, division of revenue bill. Those things are still coming. We will work with those who go all the way with us. We need a budget to get South Africa working.
The Witwatersrand African Taxi Association, WATA, is calling on government to intervene and address taxi wars with urgency. This follows the fatal shooting of 3 men believed to be taxi marshals in Mufolo Central, Soweto this morning. Johannesburg Metro Police and emergency services are currently at the scene of the shooting. Motorists have been encouraged to use alternative routes. The motive for the killing is still unknown and no one has been arrested yet. Hamilton Mia is WATA's spokesperson.
For the past 10 years, we've been living like this. We tried by all means to involve the government. We even wrote an email to the president and ministers to intervene. But moving forward, we will put everything to the police to do their job. Police will investigate.
City Power in Johannesburg says it's concerned about escalating sabotage to its infrastructure. This follows the rearrest of a 55-year-old suspect from the Booysens squatter camp in Johannesburg last month for attempting to sabotage the power utilities infrastructure in an underground tunnel. City Power says the suspect was arrested in the same location for a similar offence in October last year. Spokesperson Isaac Mangena.
The suspect was in frequent cell phone communication with certain individuals, including someone identified as a police officer shortly before entering the tunnels. This raises important questions regarding possible collusion enabled by the police and calls for more thorough investigation into how criminal syndicates operate, potentially with inside assistance. City Power takes this matter seriously and have decided to petition senior authorities within SAPS to conduct full investigation into this police officer implicated in aiding cable theft and also protecting criminals.
The trial within a trial to determine the admissibility of the accused in the Jocelyn Smith kidnapping and human trafficking trial is expected to resume in the High Court in Saldanha Bay in the Western Cape today. Jaquina Police, Stephen van Ryn and the child's mother Kelly Smith are on trial for her disappearance in February last year. Bali Taifoma reports.
Accused Jaquina Police and Stephen van Ryn gave their statements between the 4th and 5th of March last year. They however contend that the statements were given under duress and that they were tortured by police into making the so-called confessions. In his statement, Van Ryn says he accompanied the police on the 19th of February last year to take Jocelyn to the home of Makalima on the instructions of Kelly Smith. He says they left the child there and that he did not see her again. According to a police statement, on the Sunday before the child went missing, Kelly Smith told him she was tired of Jocelyn's father, wanting her to give them the child.
And finally, further afield, Asian markets have sunk further into the red today as traders react to President Trump's import tariffs. Investors are worried the levies could lead to a global recession. European Union trade ministers will meet today to discuss the crisis. The Estonian economy minister Erkki Keldo said free trade has enormous benefits and that Trump's new levies would have consequences.
It will make different services and products and goods a lot more expensive for U.S. consumers, in the later for European consumers. So I don't think it's the right direction to go. But of course, as a EU, we will be always preferring to negotiate and be constructive to find a solution with the United States.
The top story, the SAWA Deputy President Paul Mashatile says for the Democratic Alliance to stay in the government of national unity, they would have to support the budget. The DA, following their FedEx meeting, indicated that they want to remain as a part of the GNU. Headlines at 12:30 for SFM News. I'm Kulufelo Tefo.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Thanks so much, Kulufela. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 7 minutes after 12 o'clock, and thanks so much for being with us on Update at Noon. Oh, quite a bit happening. 3 men shot and killed in Soweto, so we'll check in with our reporter to find out what the latest is from there. Initially, it was thought that this was taxi-related, so more taxi violence, and we've seen quite a bit of that over the past few months. We'll find out from our reporter if there are any further details to share. And then the ANC's top 7 meeting today to discuss issues relating to the government of national unity, and that, of course, following the passing of the budget last week, where key partner, the Democratic Alliance, voted against the fiscal framework. So it's going to be interesting to see what the ANC ultimately comes up with there. As it will, it'd be interesting to see what the Democratic Alliance decides. They met last week after that budget vote. They are to meet again to further deliberate on the way forward regarding participation in the GNU. So we're keeping an eye on all of those developments just to see where all of this goes. And then another GNU partner, the Inkatha Freedom Party, their NEC will hold a press briefing shortly. By the bottom of the hour, we we are hoping. And we'll see if we can dip in there to find out what it is that their outcomes from their NEC meeting has come to. And of course, the NEC, among other things, had to deliberate on the state of the party and the state of the country, as well as the national budget and the GNU. So we've got Fanele Mhlongo there, but as I say, we will attempt to just dip in to hear what the IFP has to say. And then we're also keeping an eye on dam levels with the recent heavy rains in several provinces. The Department of Water and Sanitation has now opened a fifth sluice gate at the Vaal Dam to manage the rapidly increasing water levels in that catchment area. And residents in and around that area have been warned to please vacate if need be, and also those who need to move some of their valuables to higher ground to do so. So we'll speak to the Department of Water and Sanitation about that. And then 2 people have died in a devastating fire that swept through the New Rest informal settlement in Wellington this morning. And we understand the fire may have destroyed around 200 structures and displaced around 800 people. And we'll follow up on that story as well. A few others, including court stories, that we'll bring you updates on. And please let us know what's on your mind as well.
From Engutu to Durban, twins born with one dream, Maskandi greatness, millions, fame and family. Will money tear them apart or unite them? Brand new telenovela, Amalanga Wafani, starts April 2025, weekdays at 6:30 on SABC 1.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Gauteng police have launched a manhunt for a group of gunmen who opened fire and killed 3 men believed to be taxi marshals in Mufullo Central in Soweto. Now, Johannesburg Metro Police and emergency services are currently on the scene of that shooting, where vehicles are being diverted away from the area. Motorists are advised to avoid using the junction of Machaba Drive and Mageza Street. But for more on this, we're joined by SABC News reporter Lerato Makola. Lerato, good afternoon. So just give us a sense of exactly where this incident took place and the circumstances surrounding the shooting from what you've managed to establish.
Good afternoon, Sakina and the listeners at home. Yes, we are here at Mopolo, Zulu Street in Soweto, where the 3 men have been shot and killed around 8 o'clock this morning. And when we arrived here, we tried to speak with the community members. The community members are still waiting outside, but they didn't want to speak to the media, saying that they fear for their lives. Community members have expressed shock, saying someone could have been involved in the crossfire, but we did manage to speak with the police, Gauteng police spokesperson, Notolo Kweza. She has confirmed that when they arrived here, they found high-caliber cartridges on the scene, which implies that suspects were armed with larger, powerful guns. And she mentioned that the motive of the killing is still unknown and no one has been arrested as yet. But she said that the rising taxi violence in the area is concerning. And she mentioned that they will leave no stone unturned to solve this case. And we also managed to speak with Waters Rent African Taxi Association, Sakina, and they are calling on the government to intervene to address the taxi war with agency. Water spokesperson Hamilton Dlobu, he said that for the past 10 years, they've been living like this, living in fear. Every day they wake up to gunshots. And he said that he wants the government to try by all means to solve this case. And he mentioned that they did try to involve the government as well. They wrote an email to the president, to the ministers to intervene, but they said that nothing is changing, and they said that moving forward, they'll put everything to the police, and they will allow the police to do their investigations, and they'll update them later.
Lerato, did Hamilton, was he able to identify whether these were members of his taxi association, or what did the police say? Were those taxi marshals from any particular association that have come forward?
Yes, Sakina Hamilton mentioned that the members were part of his taxi association, WATA, and the police, they said that they were still investigating. They asked us to give them more time so that they can investigate. But WATA Hamilton, as spokesperson, he did confirm, and he did mention that he's been trying to get hold of his colleagues yesterday, and he mentioned that the members were on their way to work, to the taxi rank. And yes, he did confirm that the members were part of his taxi association, Sakina.
And as you say, this is now, the umpteenth incident in a few months. And what are the police saying? Because there were incidents in the East Rand. Then I remember back in Soweto again last month, if not the month before, where 2 people were even killed when Metro Police were trying to get to the scene of some incident. So what are the police saying? What are they doing? Are they actually getting to the bottom of this?
The police mentioned, Natolo Kweza said that they are still investigating some of the matters, and she said that it's difficult for them to crack some of the cases because community members, they don't want to speak with the police because they say that they fear for their lives. So she mentioned that they will try to investigate and try to protect community members, and she has encouraged community members to come forward and assist police officers to crack or to investigate this, because when we arrived here in the morning, we've been trying to engage with the community members, but they said that they fear for their lives. They say that they couldn't speak with us. Some of them mentioned that if they speak to us, then after we leave, then they might be involved, they might be shot as well. So the police mentioned that they have encouraged community members to come forward and engage with the police so that they will be protected.
Protected how? Did she go into that? Because these fears are very real. Did she give any indication of how whistleblowers would be protected?
No, she didn't dwell much on that. She didn't, but she mentioned that to ask the community members to assist the police with investigations, because if community members fear for their lives, we understand that it's understandable that they should fear for their lives. But she mentioned that if they can't speak to the police, then they will not be able to crack or to solve the cases much faster. But she has encouraged them to be to assist the police to investigate in the investigations, but she didn't mention, or she didn't tell us about the protection and how they will be protected. I'll ask her and I'll update you once I have that information, Sakina.
Thank you so much, Lerato. And Lerato Makola is in Soweto. Keep safe there. And SABC News reporter Lerato Makola following this story for us, where 3 taxi marshals have been shot and killed in Mofolo Central in Soweto. So we're keeping an eye on that. Our reporters are on the scene, but also would love to hear your views in terms of what you think may possibly be a solution, but also what is being said by the police, because these are ongoing situations and it's not just confined to Soweto or just to Gauteng. So how should the police deal with taxi violence in the country?
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
Now, the ANC's National Executive Committee will meet today to discuss the way forward regarding the Government of National Unity. And this follows the passing of the budget last week, where a key partner, the Democratic Alliance, voted against the fiscal framework. Deputy President Paul Mashatile has emphasized the importance of the Government of National Unity mandate to make South Africa work. Now, he was speaking to the media on the sidelines of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation Legacy Business Breakfast that was held in Ilovo in Sandton this morning.
When we were discussing the budget in Parliament, we called the EFF to persuade them to vote for the budget, but they didn't agree. That was the last time we met them. As you know, they voted against the budget. We're trying to engage different parties. I also talked to MK people. They also said, no, they are not supported. So we're engaging everybody.
And just finally, from my end, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, says that they don't want to leave the GNU. How could they rectify the situation if they want to continue participating in the GNU?
They must vote for the budget.
The budget has been passed.
They must come and support it. Remember, we are not done. We're just voting for the fiscal framework. The appropriation bill is coming. There are a lot of money bills that are lined up coming. So now that they've not voted for the fiscal framework, it set the tone of what they will do with the appropriation bill, division of revenue bill. Those things are still coming. We will work with those who go all the way with us. We need a budget to get South Africa working.
DP, it's Heidi Jacobs from ENCA. Basically what Juanita has asked you in terms of who else are you looking at speaking to, because the DA seems hell-bent on not accepting this budget because of other issues they want addressed. The ANC is not backing down when it comes to Bella and expropriation. So what is your way forward, and have you engaged at all with the DA? You're meeting today as top 7 at 10 o'clock, but have you at all engaged with the DA moving forward when it comes to the GNU?
We have not engaged with the DA as yet because we are waiting for this meeting at 10 o'clock. We agreed that let's retreat, let's have a meeting of the national officials, the NWC. We might even need a meeting of the NEC itself. Then those engagements will indicate where to. So if the NWC say, well, go and speak to this or that party, we will do that.
Okay, DP, you've been proven in the budgets this past week, the votes, that you actually don't need the DA because you were able to pass the budget without the DA. So maybe this is the question. Do you still want the DA in the GNU? Do you think you still need the DA in the GNU?
Well, let me not single them out. Remember, there's a government of national unity. We wanted everybody in the government of national unity to go with us. That's why the president said to the DA, if you don't vote with us, it means you are defining yourself outside. Not that we don't need you. So the ball is in their court.
So for the latest regarding the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting, we joined on the line now by our reporter Sibahle Mota. Sibahle, good afternoon. So ANC National Executive Committee, they are meeting today. Of course, the NWC would inform a lot of what will be discussed here. What are we observing so far?
Good afternoon, Sakina, to you as well as the listeners. Right now the observations is that the ANC NWC is very mum on what is happening inside the meeting. As you know, in most instances, media are not allowed to be inside of these meetings, but we do have a clear agenda of what is being discussed in this NWC, and mainly is the fact that the ANC's biggest GNU partner, the DA, did not vote for last week's fiscal policy framework, which is the budget, and that the FF Plus as well did not participate. So that is generally the talk around their future, the DA's future in the GNU, and it seems like ANC, NEC members are quite split on this fact in regards, does the DA continue to serve in the GNU, or has it defied the GNU in that it did not support this fiscal framework? But only time will tell on what is going to happen. It's also very telling, Sakina, the fact that the NEC was postponed or put on ice just to allow this NWC meeting to actually sit today. So those are the discussions that are ongoing, but you do get a sense that these discussions are quite robust. And if the DA does continue to serve in the GNU, what will the NEC decide? Does it limit the number of seats in cabinet that the party has to allow possibly the other parties who voted for the budget to be passed? So those are generally just the conversations that we are expecting to take place in the NWC.
Well, very instructive from the Deputy President there, as we heard. They haven't yet, the ANC, met with the DA or engaged them in any way post that parliamentary session where the fiscal framework was voted for. And what are you able to pick up on body language? Is there anyone who's willing to say anything there? Because I know you can't get in, but, usually some people would be willing to talk, Sibahle.
Yes, definitely. I mean, Sakina, judging from the statements also that were thrown around in the weekend, I mean, even before this budget was passed, as you played the Deputy President, you are seeing that the ANC wants to take a very firm stand against what one could even possibly define as some form of defiance by the DA, not voting in favor of this policy framework. I mean, even I think it was on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, ANC SG Fikile Mbalula also saying that, you know what, they're not happy with what the DA has done, but the ball is in their court. But I mean, we've also spoke to a couple of analysts, like, who are painting a picture saying that, no, the DA will not leave the GNU, but the conditions of them staying may just not be as comfortable as they were previously. So, but on the ground with ANC members, they are wanting to take a very, very firm stance against the DA. And ironically, even on the weekend, the SACP, who has also decided to go on the local government elections alone, are asking the ANC just to take a very firm stance against the DA, saying that they should be kicked out, or the DA rather should be letting themselves out. I mean, how can they want to preside over a budget that they didn't vote for? And that's the sentiment that even the ANC Deputy President Paul Mashadile has shared. So I think it's a very, very tense situation. And over the weekend as well, hearing Big Business saying that the ANC and the DA just need to find their feet on this matter. So it will be very tense, but we should have an outcome very soon to see what the ANC has actually deliberated on, and subsequently its meeting with the DA.
Thanks so much, Sibahle Mota. And Sibahle watching that NWC meeting of the ANC for us to see what comes out of that. Meanwhile, the Democratic Alliance will meet again to further deliberate on the way forward regarding their participation in the Government of National Unity. For the latest there, we join on the line now by our reporter Zara Groenewald. Zara, good afternoon. So Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen made it known that they are not leaving the GNU. So what are the latest developments there? What is the DA discussing at this point?
Good morning, Sakina. As far as we know, the DA, they've made it very clear they're very much committed to staying in the GNU. They are likely to meet with ANC officials later today. It has not yet been confirmed, but to discuss what is going to be happening with the GNU. Unfortunately, we are behind. It is locked up very tight behind closed doors. They're not opening to comment right now, but they have just reaffirmed that they are going into the talks, willing to see what is next with the GNU as well as staying in it.
Well, Zara, also the passing of the budget, do they still maintain their stance that led to them voting against the fiscal framework last week?
The GNU has been, the DA, my apologies, has been very adamant that they do not accept the 0.5 VAT hike in the budget. We know last week they threatened legal action over the fiscal framework that was voted on in Parliament. And as far as we know, they've made no updates on that. As far as we know, that is still their standing going into the discussions later today. They still reject that 0.5 VAT increase.
Well, Zara, thanks so much. Zara Groenewald watching the proceedings of the Democratic Alliance for us. Well, just a few minutes before news time. So let's play for you what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say in putting down his foot, that the business fraternity won't dictate political terms to the ANC, especially in this fallout between the ANC and the DA.
A number of business people have written a letter to both myself and John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance. And I can say that business does not dictate what happens. One in government does not dictate what happens in the ANC that I lead. We take our own decisions based on our considerations of everything that will advance the interests of our people. But of course, like any other citizen, they are entitled, as any citizen is entitled, to express their views, their wishes, and their fears. And all of us here as South Africans, we have views and fears and aspirations, so they too are entitled to do so. But in the end, I want it to be clear that the ANC will not be influenced by what business says. We are principally influenced by what our people say. And so we are not under pressure from business or whoever. If we are under any pressure, it is pressure that comes from our people, and our people as a whole, not only ANC members. And the pressure that comes from our people is about poverty, it's about inequality and unemployment. And those are the issues that influence our decisions. And so therefore we have to heed what our people are saying.
And that was President Cyril Ramaphosa, but we'll get a further perspective and analysis on that from a political writer, analyst and author, Dr. Ibrahim Harvey. But right now, it's 12:30. Let's bring you up to speed with news headlines with Kulufelo Tifo.
Thank you, Sakina. In the headlines, the SAWA Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, says the best way to drive economic growth is through infrastructure development. He was commenting on the impact of the Trump tariffs on the global markets and what it would mean for the forecasted economic growth of the country. The Witwatersrand African Taxi Association is calling on government to intervene and address taxi wars with urgency. This follows the fatal shooting of 3 men believed to be taxi marshals in Mufulo, Central Soweto this morning. And motorists around the Northern Cape have been urged to exercise caution on the roads following a yellow level 4 warning by the South African Weather Service for severe thunderstorms and heavy rainfall across parts of the province. Details at 1.
SAFM Sport with John Gericka.
Hello, hello.
How's it? Welcome back.
Welcome back to
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, some people, have all the luck.
I was gallivanting.
Yeah. Well, I do not.
What do you mean, some people? I gallivant
Some people
very
like you.
rarely.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I gallivant a lot. It's fine.
Thank you.
Can I tell you some sport?
Please do.
Okay, let's start with the Premiership. Sekhukhune, I'm going to put it down now. Sekhukhune have all but secured 3rd spot in the Premiership this weekend. They beat Cape Town City 2-1. They move 1 point ahead of TX Galaxy, but have 2 games in hand. 3rd spot's the CAF Confed qualifying spot, by the way. At the top, Sundowns had the weekend off. Pirates closed the gap to just 12 points now and have 3 games in hand. Buccaneers coach Jose Rivera is not complaining about his side's schedule. They meet MC Elgin on Wednesday in the Champions League because he says it's due to their success.
We are having this schedule because we decided to be extremely competitive this season since day one, and that's why we are still alive in the Champions League competition. We are trying our best in the league as well. We have to play after Wednesday. On Saturday we have another semi-final in the Netbank, and the schedule is what it is because we are asking for, we are fighting, we are trying to win every match, to play as much games as possible. So I think the schedule is tight. We know we're trying our best in order to get ready for each and every game. We're not going to change until the end. The results, we'll see what's coming, but again, I think the guys, the boys showed today one more time that they want to win.
In England, 9 o'clock tonight, Leicester take on Newcastle. Leicester have lost 7 Premier League games in a row without scoring a single goal. No team in English football history has ever lost 8 home league games in a row without scoring, so the Foxes stand on the verge of becoming unwanted history makers. Meanwhile, Newcastle boss Eddie Howe feels the opposition can turn things around.
I always look at how a team plays, and I think Leicester have been very competitive. The results don't necessarily show that, but I look back to the Manchester United game where I thought they would win the game, and they had chances to score and then the result is really deceiving, I think, in the overall strength of their team, and I think that's been consistent for them. So we know they're dangerous. We know they've got good players. Jamie Vardy's still a massive threat. He brings his unique qualities that we're going to need to control. Ruud's got his team playing good football as well, so we're going to have to be on our guard. There's no easy games at this level.
The Bulls, only South African rugby side to advance to the quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup this weekend. The men from Pretoria beat French side Bayonne 32-22 to book a final 8 spot against Edinburgh, who beat the Lions 24-12. The Sharks were humbled by Lyon with a 34-21 beating. On a side note, the Bulls and the Sharks were the highest attended matches of the weekend. Let's hear from Bulls coach Jake White.
I mean, they're unbeaten at home. They haven't lost a game. That's the first game they've lost this year. So, that's because the crowd, the atmosphere, the whole build-up, the media here are rugby crazy too. It's not a place where you can be in a small town and no one talks about rugby. And that's why I would have grabbed this result and I would have grabbed it too because we played like we did. It doesn't look like we got any injuries and we can now build on that momentum into the next couple of rounds. And that means Edinburgh, and then it means Munster, and it means Glasgow, which are, those are 3 massive clubs that you have to beat in the next month.
In cricket news, the Dolphins missed out on the place in the 4-day series final. They were beaten by the Warriors in the only completed match of the weekend. Durban side lost by just 37 runs. The loss means the Titans will play the Lions in Johannesburg in the final that starts on Thursday. In tennis, the men and women are onto the clay. It's the Monte Carlo Masters. Round of 16 today sees Stan Wawrinka in action, Lorenzo Musetti, Fabiano Bonini as well. Daniel Medvedev's ranked 9th. He takes on Karen Khachanov in an all-Russian match. Medvedev says he will ease into the clay court season.
Never big expectations on clay, even if I do consider playing better and better every year. And in general, being more calm on clay, understanding more what I have to do, etc. But never big expectations, so more let's see where my game is at on clay, and then build from there.
And now for today's soundbite for no particular reason. Could have been so many. Manchester Derby dud, Liverpool losing to Fulham, the mighty Everton holding the Gunners to a draw. There was locally TS Galaxy holding Chiefs winless for a 4th time in a row. In rugby, there were the Blitzboks finishing just 4th in the championship. Sharks losing to Lyon. But I've decided to be positive again. Max Verstappen.
It is official. You do this just to bug me. It is official.
He held off the charging McLarens to win a dull jump in his Formula One Grand Prix. He closed the gap in the championship leader, Lando Norris, to just 1 point. For that, Super Max earns my award for the week.
Super Max. Bye.
Okay, bye.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Well, thanks so much, John Chirica. He'll be back with more sports news tomorrow. Right, just taking a look at what we still have to come. We'll bring you up to speed with some of the court stories and quite a few and interesting ones as well. The Amantle court case, that was the case of the rape, kidnapping and murder of Amantle. That was supposed to be in the Protea Magistrates Court. That case has been moved to the High Court, but we will check in with our reporters regarding the Jocelyn Smith trial, as well as 6 Mozambican nationals were arrested for alleged manufacturing and dealing in illicit drugs were expected to appear in the Standerton Court. So those some of the stories that we will bring you updates on. But right now, getting back to Government of National Unity, African National Congress, Democratic Alliance, and you heard there from our reporters what has been happening in those two camps. But of course, also played for you what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say. But right now, we are joined on the line for some analysis. Unfortunately, Dr. Harvey had a family emergency, but grateful to have political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast to speak to us. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Update at Noon.
Thank you very much for having me.
So firstly, the business community calling on the ANC and the DA presidents to ensure that the Government of National Unity does not sink. Your take on that first and foremost?
First of all, the GNU, I don't think that it was a brainchild of the DA or the ANC. I think it was a brainchild of the market forces. The DA, on a number of occasions, has indicated that it doesn't want to work with the ANC in the same way the ANC has had issues with the posture of the DA in terms of how it does things. That's why the DA came up with the notion of a moonshot pact and then came up with another idea of a multi-party charter, but then it could not garner enough votes. And then there was an invisible hand of the market forces to facilitate this marriage. Now, then the market forces are coming back again to say that no. You can't go separate ways. No matter what, you have to work side by side. Now, the ANC, after all, it has to make a call. And it's going to be interesting how the turn of events is going to be. Because if the ANC says it is going separate ways, so there are two things that might happen. One, there will be a shortfall. Yes, there have been political parties. We have given a buy-in to this budget, but still the numbers will not be enough. It would mean that the ANC then must reach out to, let's say, EFF, MK, and I can bet my bottom dollar, if that arrangement is made, there might be a backlash from the market forces. And I'm not saying that is right or wrong. I'm just reading what might happen.
So what do you read into President Cyril Ramaphosa's tone when he was asked this question yesterday, where he says, the ANC takes its own decisions and it will not be influenced or dictated to by the business community?
Yes, the ANC is an independent political party, but he who pays the piper calls the tune. The business sector has always influenced the strategic direction of the ANC. The ANC doesn't have a binding ideological framework. It's a broad church. You've got capitalist, Africanist, this and that. So, but of late, business has had too much grip over the ANC. So if the ANC decides to go separate ways with the DA, President Ramaphosa might be seen to be gravitating to a direction which is proper for the party. But if the ANC let go of the DA, I can bet my bottom dollar the markets, I think, would want to send a message that it is unhappy about the way things are. And maybe we will see that in terms of the market indicators. So the ANC is stuck between the rock and a hard place, because either way, there will be a backlash.
What about the Democratic Alliance? They were very firm on their position last week in voting against the fiscal framework. So how do they walk this one back? Because we heard from some of the other GNU partners during that debate in the National Assembly last week, where they were saying the DA must go. These are their coalition partners within the GNU, quite apart from the ANC. So how does the DA walk this one back?
I think the DA has had a change of heart. They have changed gear of late. I see that they are more humble now. They don't want to walk out of this arrangement. And now they are taking a tune from the market forces as well, that if they divorce with the ANC, this might pose a threat to the country. So they want to stick around, but also because they have tasted power, you see, and also they have been, I don't want to say strategic, but every time they do something, they say it's the DA minister. So I suspect that they want to frame a discourse in the build-up to local government elections and say they've done well in the GNU, therefore they can do well at local government level. But I think the ANC, they feel that they have not been accorded the respect that they deserve from the DA. Yeah, I mean,
what about principle? What about principle?
In politics, I think there's nothing of the sort. Money talks. Money talks because business, I think, wants to have a say in this political arrangement. And the worst thing that they want to happen is for the ANC to join forces with the EFF and MK, because they suspect that there might be leftist policies that might affect how they make profit. So, yeah, but the ANC is the one that is in a corner, is the one that is in, because either way, they can't win.
What about the other coalition partners in this? And this is something that came starkly to the fore last week, where if you listened to the press briefings that were held by the ANC, by the DA especially, and I think when Helen Zille spoke, it became patently clear that this is essentially and ostensibly an arrangement between the ANC and the DA and the rest. So where does that leave the other GNU partners? Because from what Helen was saying, when we talk about sufficient consensus, it harps back to what the arrangement was at the turn of democracy between the ANC and the National Party at the time, where sufficient consensus was when, in fact, this was not even then, it was before, when they were still negotiating at CODESA. And the question about sufficient consensus arose, and it was said, well, if Rolf and Cyril agree, that's sufficient consensus. So it seems as though we're back to that sort of arrangement. So if you are one of the other GNU partners, where does this leave you?
I don't think that the air was cleared in the beginning, because there have been different understandings about this arrangement. Because the ANC says, no, this is a GNU. The DA says, no, this is a coalition partnership. And we are the main coalition partners. For instance, the ANC says, no, matters of foreign policy, we are not going to discuss that with you. This area belongs to us. The DA says, no, you did not win the elections by yourself. You have to get our own views as well. So I think that the problem has been maybe, having different interpretations about the GNU. Other GNU partners like Gatin, and Gatin likes power. He's been saying all sorts of good things about the GNU, so he's not going to walk away. The IFP, they are not going to walk away. And also other coalition, but Action SAs, they are not happy with the posture of the DA, maybe because they have a long-standing bad blood, given the fact that their leader was once a mayor of the DA. They are willing to join forces with the ANC, according to them, so long as the ANC is not going to have a huge executive. Because they believe in fiscal discipline.
Just a final one. I asked the Minister of COCTA, Velenkosini Tlhabisa, about that this morning. And he repeated an oft-heard refrain that we've heard from ministers, especially in the GNU, who say that the voters voted for this bloated cabinet. And I said to him, we did not. No voters in South Africa voted for a bloated cabinet. They didn't vote for the extension because the very same parties who told us that the cabinet was bloated had no problem with that cabinet being expanded even further to make room for them to be accommodated. So, again, what's your take on all of this and how it ultimately will play out?
Well, first of all, the voters were not involved regarding the creation of this animal called a GNU. The voters, yes, they voted the way they did. No party emerged as a winner, and then parties decided then without the voters to join forces, right? Now, the problem is that the executive institution has always been, still is, a terrain that is used to dish out favors in exchange for whatever, right? So that one can hold on to power. We are saying we have a budget deficit, meaning that we spend more than what we have. Paradoxically, we decided then to expand the executive. So when are we going to settle now the debt? Because the debt has been going up. So the point I'm making is that the executive has always been used, whether it's the ANC or this arrangement, as a terrain to dish out favors, either to henchmen or to certain people in exchange for but it is wrong to say that the voters voted for this executive to be designed this way.
Well, thanks so much. And Tigilelo Breakfast political analyst, just helping us wade through what's currently happening. And both ANC, DA, also the IFP, they getting ready for a press briefing. I'm not sure if that is already underway, but we're not picking it up as yet. But of course, all of this is happening, and it's going to be interesting to hear what the various parties who make up the government of national unity have to say, especially considering how some of them last week were of the opinion that the DA should leave the government of national unity, given that they did not vote for the fiscal framework. And therefore, their contention was that you cannot implement a budget that you did not vote for. Let's see. Lots of moonwalking is going to happen here. And we'll be right here to make sure you know what happens as it happens.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Well, time to take a look at your views. Tulani Dasa says, Sakina, when the DA joined the GNU, it wanted to be part of the solution in fixing 30 years of man-made ANC crises. Part of voting against the value-added tax increase is part of protecting our poor residents who are already suffering from Eskom increases and the high unemployment rate, etc. Vugani Ngobo says, Sakina, some of us have been very vocal about these business people who are also called market forces. Instead of having government, we have shadow governments leading from the back, which government policy is not implemented, but market forces policies are. So those are some of your messages. Let's listen to the voice notes.
Good afternoon, Zakina. Welcome back. It's really interesting listening to Paul Mashatile saying that if you want to be part of the GNU, you have to vote for the budget. Now, the thing is, I thought the GNU was a collection of parties with different political ideologies, different viewpoints, different values, and everything like that. Some will resort to corruption and others don't resort to corruption. And if they believe that what one party is trying to implement is tantamount to corruption or whatever it is, then they won't vote for it. But now you're being forced, you're being blackmailed into voting for something, otherwise you get kicked out. I mean, the ANC need to realize that they're not the only party and their word doesn't go. Everyone gives a vote on this thing. Mark from Cape Town.
Good afternoon, sir. Sakina, Mr. Malim Wembek. The national government, the GMN, it's not going to work a little bit. It's going to be shaking a little bit. It's going to be limping because every time a DA, they want to pull out, they want to dictate really because they don't want to carry the interest of the nation really. Why can't they sign